In Kyle, year 518, a bearded official in a military uniform steps forward and kicks off the proceedings. Then he declares it's time to start the execution of Baron Solus Takiel, the former lord of Esther. While Tackle pauses, a bell suddenly rings out, and he snaps into panic. Where on earth is that sound coming from? Takiel's whole body throbs as he stares at Est's central square, watching a pompous, old, bearded man thunder his speech at the townspeople. He can't stop thinking about what went wrong, and then it hits him. He remembers a public execution. Then he stares down at himself trapped and bound on that platform, and the moment hits, that's him up there, narrating everything. A shadowy figure confirms his fears. Tackle feels the air buzzing like it's 1 second away from getting pelted with stones. But he figures there's no way around it. He stares out over his territory, soaking in the blessing-rich, fertile land, and a top-tier lord in his own parents, who poured more than a decade into carving it into something worth defending. But right when he was just a little over 10, everything shattered. Plague stole his family and chief retainer. A brutal flood crushed what was left. And then the war took his brother too, snatching away a future that should have been his. After every disaster tore the world apart, all that was left was an ordinary person with zero special power, yet the nightmare still refused to end. A brutal famine hit. Then an invasion from the neighboring country followed right after. Tackle can't ignore it, everyone hated him, spitting that he was incompetent and nothing more than a lord with no power. After the defeat, he had no choice but to trade his own life and even a little wealth for one last promise. His people would be safe, and their homes would stand. He's hoping they finally feel a little safer, like they can breathe again. Right as he's about to finally reunite with everyone he lost, a stranger barks an order to light the fire, and the flames erupt like they're alive. Out of nowhere, a voice snaps his name, Lord Tackle, and Tackle instantly knows exactly who it is. A voice screams at everyone to clear the way, as a dark-haired girl named streaks through the crowd like she's on a mission. Tackle shouts her name, and the second he sees her safe, relief crashes over him as he insists he's just glad she got out of that mansion attack alive. Then Anne barrels through the wooden execution platform, smashing the beams and toppling the whole structure as she drops to the ground in her cloak, desperate to reach Tackle. He shouts her name, demanding she stop. No, not like that. Tackle leans in and warns Anne. Staying back is straight-up dangerous. Anne's face crumbles with tears as she chokes out her thanks, thanking him for backing her brother and sister right there as she serves as a maid for the Solis family. She opens her mouth to speak, but Tackle slams into her words until Anne cuts right back, saying she already knows. Anne lunges toward Tackle and tells him that no matter what anyone throws at him, she will always cherish his people. She sinks into a deep bow on the platform, showing him total respect. She dropped to her knees between the guards and the townspeople, begging before the execution could begin. Meanwhile, more women surge forward from the crowd, pushing to be seen. People hailed how Tackle never stopped burning the midnight oil and sacrificing sleep to rebuild a territory that was falling apart. Another swore he'd fought side by side with them through every disaster, scraping by on scraps for meals and beds. A third insisted he threw himself into the plague. Response running for the people without a shred of fear of infection. And they all blurt out in unison that they've got the answer. Tackle freezes in shock, staring as he realizes it's Claire, Misery, and Rosa. And he can't even process it. Even now, they're still praying and crying for him. Tackle tries to take it all in and asks himself if he's always been this popular. Then he spots the stunning women and bursts out laughing. He flashes a grin and claims he's happy like this moment doesn't even stand a chance. Bound to the execution stake and hemmed in by a swelling crowd, his eyes suddenly snap because Tackle spots something off about everyone standing around him. And then bam, out of nowhere, a wild, blinding light starts bursting onto the execution site, flooding everything with brutal radiance. The crowd erupts in shock as one person stares and demands, "What is this light?" Tackle's vision starts to blur, and he can't tell if it's the smoke or something much worse, because suddenly he realizes this could be the end. He bows and thanks everyone, then grovels, apologizing for being the most useless lord imaginable. Then a booming voice announces that when Tackle's skill manifests, space-time magic will be grafted onto him as Bloodline Magic Plus, a territory appraisal skill. and Tackle's face snaps from shock into pure, helpless confusion as he clocks that this awakening is happening right now of all times. The narrator breaks it down. When a lord finally awakens, loyalty sparks the realm, and your people's presence, right there, decides your worth. Because when they're gone, so is your value. Then, skills ignite to bless everyone. But a shout cuts through the air. It's too late, his authority can't awaken now. And in that single moment, Tack realizes this is how it all ends, and he yells that he's done with all of this. Because Solis Vonticle's world is finished at least, that's what it was meant to be. A dusty historical record claims that in the 493rd year of Kyle's reign, Tackle was born as Baron Solis' second son. Then the story flips hard. Because right after, Tackle can't move a muscle at all, panicking about where he is, while someone listening realizes his voice sounds seriously wrong, and Tackle suddenly realizes a hand's already trying to grow out of him, but he can't tell what's happening. Then it finally clicks. Boom, panic rips through his mind. He's a baby now. A system prompt suddenly pops up, demanding you choose your fate with a clear yes or a risky no. Dent breaks it all down step by step, then lets his authority snap into place the instant the move is executed. Pouring space-time transfer through space-time magic, he cranks to the absolute limit, while all the territory appraisal info is locked into a book that chronicles the Solis Barony's entire history. His soul, his body, and even every bit of the Soli Barony's past get swept into the new vessel, while his old body gets obliterated and remade. But maxing the transfer magic brings savage backlash after it's used. Both the space-time magic and his bloodline magic get sealed shut. Tackle has zero memory of trying bloodline magic as a final gamble, but the second the choice pops up, he happily slams yes anyway. The system locks in the choice and declares space-time transfer is starting right now, so Tackle can't help but wonder if he really got reborn through bloodline magic. Yet that gut feeling screams something's wrong. Right at the very last second, Tackle finally gets it. He actually did pull it off. Those prayers had to be fueling him, because out of nowhere, a book called Solis Baron History slams into existence right in front of his eyes. It's like the moment hits him, he can suddenly see his father, his mother, his siblings, and every person he fought with beside him, all standing there again. At this point, he stops caring about keeping it together because he can finally see everyone's faces again, and one person just calls out that there's no real atmosphere, as if to say, "You're a baby, so of course you're sobbing." And the moment that hits, his Tackle fully loses it and wails harder than ever. Then Tackle's mother grabs him in a tight hug and asks what's wrong. He clocks her instantly. This is his mother. She died at just 35, back when he was 16, which means she's only 19 in this moment. And he's staring at her, utterly shattered by what he's seeing. His mom beams and invites him to eat together, smiling like sunshine, asking if he's been hungry the whole time, while baby Tackle just stares back, utterly lost. Then everything inside him snaps like the final thread just broke. He snaps back, saying the guy in front of her might look like a baby, but he's actually trapped in a middle-aged body. Then he demands she stop, but his mother beams and asks if little Tackle-chan is hungry. Tackle thinks, yeah, right. Hunger's not the real problem here. And outside, the Solis Manor looms under a heavy, cloudy sky. But even with all his protests, Tackle couldn't outrun his instincts and caved the moment he was given something to eat. He racked his brain, desperate to remember what he was even trying to say in the first place. Then it hits him. He suddenly doubts every word he just said about being a man in his late 40s. An older-looking blonde young guy steps into view, and the truth smashes into him. He was executed at 20, so he can't possibly be late 40s at all. Tackle feels this eerie wave hit him, and boom, shattered flashes slam into his head. Grown-ups' legs strolling by, him as a tiny baby crawling and poking at the world. A coworker still grinding late at a desk. Waves of people, piles of papers and books. Then it all snaps into place, and his eyes blow wide with pure shock. More memories crash to the surface. Tackle watches faces in a room, a person sprawled in bed, and a lone figure hammering at a desk under a dim lamp in the dark, and he finally recognizes it. The memories are snapping into focus. Suddenly, a desperate memory crashes in his hands, stretching out, a man's choking scream cutting through the air as he begs, Why did this have to happen right when it was finally starting? Because he just thought everything was going perfectly and that he could finally put his wife at ease. These are Nishita Takahiro's memories, and right there, baby Takiel freezes, processing the shock like it just rewrote his entire world, because these happened before he was even born as Takiel. Baby Takel's face contorts in raw worry and pain, and Takahiro's mind tears through the worst of it. If he's gone, their child won't have anyone. The baby is alone now, helpless, and the thought hits him like a punch. Tears spill as it all crashes down. Then right in front of him, a gentle hand reaches out, and someone whispers, softly, "Takahiro-chan, don't cry." Tackle stares at the doorway, and then his mother steps in, bending over him with a soft smile that instantly tells him, "Don't worry, I'm right here." Baby Tackle gaps up at her young face, barely out of her teen years, while a hand swoops in to wipe the tears away, and a dark-haired man with a warm smile tells her she's ruining that handsome face. Tackle spots his father at once, Baron Solis grinning down at him with real, warm affection. Then the story flips into full-on chaos. Someone shouts at the Dalek to stop it while the families huddle together, cheering baby Tackle as his mom and dad, and even what looks like a sibling, all try to lift his spirits. The distraction hits, and baby Tackle blurts out that his tears are finally gone, his face cracking into a real smile as the family's warmth wraps around him. Meanwhile, the whole family crowds onto the couch, father, mother, baby Tackle, and the siblings sinking into a rare, peaceful pocket of home life happiness. But then baby Tackle's eyes go wide like reality just snapped back into place, and he realizes exactly how cruel this ending is going to be for this family. And those brutal questions slam into his head. Will he lose everything again, and will he have to relive that same crushing sadness and pain all over? Baby Tackle's face hardens with pure, fierce determination. He refuses to let that tragedy repeat. He's set on dodging the exact fate that crushed the Baron's family in the earlier history. In his mind's eye, he sees his past self swallowed by the shadows, and then he snaps into action. He's going to rewrite history, and he's got two weapons ready. The first one hands him the lessons of what happened before, turning them into modern knowledge. With that advantage, he'll forge a brand new history for this world, and he'll save his family. Baby lunges in, grabbing the tiny hands before they can reach while glowing light surges between them, because he'll do everything it takes to hit the button on his authority and get his time-space transfer skill back. As Tackle dreams of the new future he'll come back to from that first past, a mysterious figure draped in flowing robes flashes through his mind, and along with it, the thought of Yuko waiting for him there. A vivid memory hits hands reaching across a meal table, plates lined up like pieces from Takahiro's real life. And with his wife Yuko right beside him, he's about to forge a brand new future as Nishida Takahiro. His resolve hardens into something unbreakable, because the kid version of himself still can't handle everything yet. But he's got time to forge countermeasures, and with that, his path into this new future is locked in like a vow. The Kyle calendar screams year 496, and Tackle is just 3 years old, yet his mom walks in to find him reading again. He's still fresh on the talking scene, and yet he's already ripping through books like a total genius. She tells him she's got more work to finish and orders him to be a good boy. And Tackle simply smiles back he'll do it. As Tackle keeps reading, he realizes he's broken free in a way he never had before now. The world snaps into focus, crisp and clear. He's faster than anyone. And even trapped in this kid body, he's tearing through books like they're going out of style. As the Esther domain stretches out in front of him, untouched roads and wilderness still swallowed the horizon. Yet the land was huge and rich, ruled by his own bloodline, the Solis baronial house. The civilization level screams pre-industrial revolution medieval Europe, and honestly that's exactly what you'd expect from a fantasy world. That mansion isn't exactly lavish, but it feels solid, respectable, old school, and exactly the kind of place you'd expect to pop out of a classic fantasy tale. And there, under a flood of magical light, stands a mysterious figure, because in this world, magic isn't just a power, it's a badge of the nobles, the ruling class. The proof that a lord is truly noble comes in one thing: rare powers split into two kinds, sheer authority and bloodline magic. Every noble house comes with a signature power tied straight to its ruler, Each family member can tap the very same element of magic their lord uses, and once they unlock it, it never vanishes. And when the right people arrive with blessings for the land and its citizens, that's what forges authority. Basically, it's the whole deal. The moment a lord's territory hits a certain level of growth and loyalty, you start reaping those effects. The Soulless Barony's history earned its blessing of authority, and this reincarnation hands you bloodline magic too. Tackle glances at the book in front of him, grinning like he just landed the perfect treasure. This whole setup screams fantasy light novel, and it instantly lifts his spirits. Then Tackle cracks a grin and starts right where it hits hardest, the 5 calamities. He combs through the baronial chronicles, plus other books and his own memories, and somehow gathers almost everything he needs. Once he lays the 5 calamities out on a timeline, the whole picture clicks into place like this. The Kyle calendar logs what year 5-3 unleashed. The Org River floods the granary region, wiping out the towns at its heart. Then the Empire's war hits. Kyle's brother dies in battle, and the Baron's forces take brutal losses until they're left shattered and weak. Then in 506, Plague slammed his world. His father, mother, sister, and the steward all got taken, and it wiped out 20% of the whole populace. In the year 509, a brutal famine slammed the land, and another 20% were either dragged into flight or crushed by starvation. Then in year 512, a massive imperial invasion crushed them. Baronial families were wiped out, and execution followed in the wake of defeat. Taco can only stare at it like, seriously, this is disaster after disaster. Suddenly, books rocket through the air as Taco hurls them in pure frustration, screaming that he can't do anything against the weather or the enemies either. Ever since Tackle was a tiny baby, he'd occasionally dozed off with his head in his hands, and every single time his mom and the maids would absolutely freak out over what they called Tackle-chan's adorable pose. The maids burst into squeals over how adorable Takeo-sama looks, and for the first time in ages, he finally strikes that precious pose. Meanwhile, the problems are stacked sky-high. Year 530's flood comes first, but Tackle can't afford to ignore the bigger threat, because he has to dig up intel on the international situation before the invasion from the neighboring Graphonia Empire hits, and that threat is hanging over them, huge and ruthless. Worst of all is General Weiss, the ever-victorious general, who commanded the Imperial Army when it invaded Esther in the previous history, and somehow, almost nothing is known about the man at all. Tackle locks eyes on the timeline in front of him. 5 years. That's all he's got left until the first calamity hits, the Great Flood. Tackle had to find a way, so he clenched his small fist with pure determination and swore he'd make it happen. More than 2 years crawl by and back when Tackle thought one way. He's got a whole new mindset now. But now he's 5 years old. His siblings are grown, and they're all tumbling around the yard together like they never stopped. It's year 498 of the Kyle calendar, and Tackle is fighting to steady his nerves, trying to sort everything out while he's buried in mountains of books and paperwork. The disaster timeline is snapping into focus. This man lays the whole brutal truth on the table. In 499, a bountiful harvest smashed wheat prices so hard that grain income cratered. Then a neighboring country's volcanic eruption spewed ash, strangling crops into drought and famine across the region, until chaos exploded and nearby lords started fighting through misery. That one move set everything in motion when their neighbor invaded, and they fought tooth and nail on the battlefield. It ended up costing his brother his life, but they still got wiped out, losing a brutal 40% of their forces. Then in 503, the Org River burst its banks, and their granary region, along with its central town, was utterly obliterated. Suddenly, Tackle cracks the pattern, and he can't ignore what happened with the neighboring lord a year later, because it sets everything in motion. Then the very next year shows up with even worse trouble, piling on like it never stops. Year 499 was supposed to be glorious. Fields overflowed with harvest, but the prices collapsed right after, smashing incomes to the ground, and then the very next year slammed everyone with a brutal famine. Now the history of Baron Solus's domain hits way harder, because Tackle's actually living it, step by step, instead of just hearing about it. There's no way he can scrape up info on the territory or the household when, in the previous timeline, he was still just a kid back then. While he's busy at work, his mom barges in right as Tackle panics and apologizes for interrupting her. But she doesn't bite. She just asks what he's doing. So Tackle decides to start with whatever he can do. His mother tells him he can ask anything, practically glowing because he's coming to her with a favor. Then she laughs to herself that he's adorable again today. And Tackle drops a bombshell. Most civil officials can't even keep up when his mother flips into what they call demon mode. Tackle leans in and tells her, "Listen, I've got a favor to ask you. And it's serious." He's fully realized that kicking things off with a construction project might look pathetic on the surface. But with everything that has to be done, there's just no other way forward. He asks for permission to swing by the workshop and then head out into town when his mother beams at him. He knows the plan is already in motion. A few days later, she got everything set up and Tackle finally got the green light to head into the city of Est, but only with two conditions. First, he had to act like a proper noble, so someone snapped that he should mind his manners, and Tackle promptly threw in a quick excuse and slipped out. Next, the second condition kicks in. Two thrilled female servants shout at Lord Tackle, and he snaps his attention to them at once. One of them is Anne the maid, and she's the one who's riding with him as he heads into the city. Tackle and Anne roll into the city of Estond. The blonde kid is stunned all over again by how packed the place is, like it never ever slows down. Alright, this is Est, the biggest city in Esther, right on the Kyle Kingdom's southern edge, ringed by brutal massive walls with a grand plaza dead center and the Lord's mansion looming at the very back. Tackle looks around and goes, "This place is a non-stop engine." Because Est is basically the region's launchpad. Mining, farming, trade, everything that makes money in this area funnels right through here. Then they swing by a food stall where the older guy lays out local dishes and Tackle's eyes go wide as he blurts that it looks absolutely delicious. The server shouts for Lord Takiel, and instantly, he whips around to face Anne. He asks if she wants to grab food together. But out of nowhere, something strange crawls up inside him. Ever since he bit into that street food, the commoner blood left over from his past life as Nishita Takahiro woke up and started stirring inside him again. That memory punches him in the gut back when he was a young master from a baron's house, forced to watch servants eat their meals, and now he's the one living it from the noble side. Meanwhile, the woman at the stall tries to hook them up, offering to sell them one if she can also grab 3 approved by the baron's family. But Anne snaps that they're out of time, pushes them to leave, and someone blurts out an apology for startling them. They step out together and drift through Est's city streets in dead silence, soaking up every sight as they press on toward their destination. Anne is the headmaid's daughter for the Solis family, and Tackhill can't shake the weird, awkward feeling he gets around her. From the day she could walk, they trained that girl like a blade strictly, relentlessly until she grew up to be a perfect maid. And she's got this raw, natural gift for martial arts, especially swordsmanship, so dialed in that regular soldiers don't even get a real chance when she swings steel. Her father, a sergeant in the standing army, drilled self-defense into her whole childhood. Anne's only 15, and she just stepped into her new life as Tackle's personal maid after finishing her apprenticeship, though everyone already knows she's deadly good at the job, both as a maid and a bodyguard. Because as they stride through the city, Tackle can't stop brooding over something heavy. The last time he saw Anne in his second life was the moment they hauled him off and executed him right here in the same city. In the earlier timeline, Anne started out as Dalek's personal maid and bodyguard Tackle's brother, and the two of them would drill sword skills together in the courtyard every day, like they were born to clash blades and call it teamwork. Then, 3 years later, after Dalek died in battle, he swore himself to Tackle only to end up serving Tackle's sister, Clacia. But fate cut her down too, and illness took her not long after. By the time Anne hit 30, she'd seized the headmaid role after her mother died in the plague, and after losing 2 masters back to back, she sank into deep despair, shutting herself away. Tackle can't stop thinking about it as he strolls through the city with her, and the scary truth hits him. Somehow, he's already rewritten history. Right then, Anne spots something is off and snaps, "Lady Tackle, what's wrong?" But Tackle brushes it off fast, insisting it's nothing, urging them to just move on. Tackhill calls Anne a dignified, quiet, red-haired superbeauty. He admits that the moment she became his exclusive attendant, she couldn't stand him because every time he slips up like a noble disgrace, she snaps back calmly and poisons him with venomous scolding. But the way she attacks him now is totally different. Meanwhile, Anne's parents gush non-stop about Tackle, and he can't help but think getting praised to death sounds more like torture than a compliment. Tackle scrambles to apologize again, owning up to everything, saying it's his fault because he didn't act like a true noble. So now he started calling her Anne the Ice Woman all on his own. He trusts her, sure, but fear still nips at his heels. At the same time, Tackle realizes he has to watch his every move, even in the workshop, because he's pretty sure his parents think Anne will step in and keep him under control. They roll up to the workshop, and there stands Workshop Chief Geld, muscles bulging, beard bristling, arms locked across his chest. Then he cuts into Takielda and says this isn't a playground for some pampered young noble. Tackle pops in with a big grin, introducing himself as Tackle's second son of the Baron, claiming he's here to check out the workshop today, and laughing like, "Bet you all think I'm just some noble brat messing around." And he shoots the whole thing down with sharp displeasure as Geld lets out a stern, warning sound. Tackle wonders if Geld's the kind of guy who gets bossed around by his wife at home. Then Antel could stare all he wanted, clocking every detail with his own eyes, as long as it didn't mess with their work. Tackle's voice cuts through the air as they step into the workshop. Inside, Geld is blasting one of his workers with harsh words, firing off the question of how anyone could hand a customer work this sloppy and then orders it redone on the spot, yelling how many times he has to repeat the same instructions before it finally sinks in. Tackle tries to get their attention, but the yelling won't let up, and tells Lord Takiel this could be seriously bad news. Then without missing a beat, Geld snaps back. "It's fine. Really fine." He almost caught himself getting nostalgic, but he shoved it aside fast, waving it off like, "Forget it, not now." Inside the workshop, Tackhill just stares as Geld unleashes non-stop yelling at the workers. Full blast of that same furious energy so familiar it hits him like déjà vu from a black company he once knew. And even though he's not happy about any of it, the whole setup feels weirdly, painfully recognizable. Then the next day crashes in, and a few workers start whispering like, "Just what kind of noble son is Tackle, really?" While that's going on, Geld clocks the scene and realizes, at his age, this kid isn't even rattled by the brutal workshop atmosphere. Geldgreet blurts out in shock, "You're back again?" And right then, someone quips that they thought Tackle would get bored after a single visit. Tackle waves it off instantly, insisting there's nothing to worry about. Tackle spirals over why he keeps calling them the Ice Woman won't stop haunting his thoughts. But as he watches everything play out, he finally realizes she's protecting him, just in her own twisted way. Wood shavings and sawdust scatter across the workshop floor as the work grinds on, and the tension in the air feels the same as always. Geld is definitely not someone you want to approach, but Tackle isn't about to fold or quit. He says he'll just sit back and wait until Geld is free to talk. Then a worker strides up to Tackle and asks which kind of hardwood they're using. Tackle freezes for a second, then admits, "I'm kind of swamped right now," because he's still trying to piece everything together. Then another worker blurts that the delivery date is minutes away, demanding to know what they're supposed to do about this mess, while Gel just freezes and glares at Tackle in silence. The young lord glances back at him, and Geld lets out a tiny nod sound. Then, out of nowhere, a worker shouts for the young master, and Tackle shoots back immediately, his hand clenched with pure resolve. Then Geld straight up asks if Tackle actually likes woodworking, and Tackle instantly thinks, "Fine, I'll play along." But there's more. Tackle reveals what he's truly chasing, and he knows "I like it" won't hit the real point. This isn't just about enjoying woodworking. He stops mid-thought, then fires off a question. Does what he wants to make have to be built from wood and only wood? He answers with zero hesitation. Yes, it absolutely has to be wood. Geld's face snaps with shock at the kid's voice, pure, unshakable grit, so he fires off, "Is that really true, Tackle?" Then right after that talk, Tackle starts hitting the workshop almost every single day. Geld greets Tackle rumbled one day and told the young man, face to face, that he'd been working his ass off. Tackle snaps into place, calls him master, swears he won't interrupt his work, and begs to be looked after today, too. And that chat flips the switch, making Tackle start talking to Geld way more often. And that's how he winds up becoming close friends with the workshop master. Anne ponders whether she should show him that secret soon, and Tackle admits he's been getting closer to the other craftsmen too only for them to baby him like he's still a child, which feels wild when you remember how old he really is. Geld shoots a quick look at what Takiel just showed him and blurts out, "So what exactly is this?" Tackle blurts out that he wants to forge a kind of wood that can take constant beatings, asks if anything like that even exists, and then demands to know how you could shape it into a tough round form. Anne watches from the sidelines, and the thought hits her hard. She just can't pull it off the way they do. Geld shouts for Carl, barrels into the first guy who answers, and demands what's going on. The kid's got real potential before turning the question to the young master. Would he be willing to put Carl to work? A dark-haired young man in workman's clothes steps up, and Geld thrusts him into the spotlight asking Takiel to please look after Carl. Carl and Tackle slam into a handshake, and Carl grins, telling him it's a pleasure to meet him too. Soon after, Tackle steps out of the mansion and shouts to his father and mother that he's heading out, wishing them a good day before he goes. Meanwhile, back inside, his parents kick off a tense conversation. Tackle's mom points out that her son isn't the kind of kid who usually comes asking for favors. His father snaps back, "If he wants to do it, then why not let him? What's the problem?" And right after that, they realize he's been slipping in and out of the workshop almost every day again, recently. And they can't stop worrying that Takiel might not be doing okay. Tackle's quick visit to the workshop stretches into a full 3 months, and once he starts bouncing back and forth with his parents' non-stop talks, it somehow never stops. Inside the workshop, he's right there beside Carl and the other craftsmen, double-checking everything. He asks if the angle is right, tweaks the piece, and says it just needs a tiny bit more like this. The workers light up and agree. If he says it's correct, then it has to be. After weeks of building a model so massive it couldn't possibly be a kid's toy, the thing is finally finished, and the workers explode into cheers as they celebrate it's done. Just a few days later, Tackle gets yanked into the spotlight and told to speak in the mansion's courtyard, and the look on his face screams, "I did not see this coming." The butler bows and thanks everyone for squeezing in time from their packed schedules, and Tackle's father and mother step in looking sharp and super official until someone blurts, "Wait, there's one more person here." Another voice cuts in saying they want to hear Lord Takiel's proposal too, so they jump in and join the ride. Tackle stares like he's just seen a ghost at this sudden new face. Raymond, the steward who runs the Solis Barony's internal affairs and household. This isn't some random worker either. He's a heavy hitter, second only to Tackle's own father and mother. And the wild part? Raymond served Tackle's mother even before she was married, proving his talent the whole way as he stepped deeper into the Solis family. By his 20s, he'd climbed all the way to the 3rd rank. Honestly, that's insane. Raymond tells Tackle he can't wait to see what his workshop work turns into, and Tackle nods. Then he says, "I've got to be straight with you." Someone begs Raymond to go easy, and another voice snaps, "Yeah, the pressure's on big time now." But then Tackle thinks back to his old life, and admits that with Raymond, he was never really good at all. Back when Tackle's parents were still alive, he rushed to pitch his plans again and again, until Raymond tore each proposal apart with a storm of flaws so intense that Tackle couldn't even get a word out. In the end, Raymond finally greenlit every one of Tackle's ideas and folded them into his domestic policies, but the whole ordeal nearly shattered Tackle's spirit. Raymond shows up looking refreshingly blonde and ridiculously handsome, and somehow he's already unreal at his job. So good, he might as well be reading his master's mind without lifting a finger. He's the definition of a super competent steward, nailing every detail like he was born for it, even down to those beauty marks that seal the deal, and the maids are outright obsessed with him. Tackle even admits he doesn't remember being this popular back when he was younger. Meanwhile, Tackle tells himself through sheer determination that he's an adult on the inside now. Even if his face still screams kid, he admits he's not the best at handling Raymond. But one thing's crystal clear. Raymond's solid, trustworthy, all the way, and that's exactly why his involvement here is. It hits like a total shock, yet somehow it's the perfect opening. Tackle whips around to Anne and begs her to start, and Anne shoots back a fast, confident yes. Then, Tackle yanks out a mechanical device and demands everyone stare at it because this wild contraption is packed with intricate gears and moving parts, and yeah, it's seriously impressive. And as he starts doing it, Tackle can't help but think, Mr. Raymond is a total must-have if we're going to rewrite history. Tackle's made up his mind he needs Raymond on his side, and he's forcing it to happen right now. Meanwhile, we flip straight into Raymond's head and he can't shake his first thought about Lord Tackle straight up creepy. Back when he was just a kid, Tackle always stared at Raymond with eyes that looked scared or way too careful. And then he'd talk on purpose with that stumbling, awkward way that somehow still hit Raymond like this weird, negative kind of awe. Raymond keeps mulling over young Tackle, and somehow the kid earns everyone's trust, turning every person he meets into an ally, from the townspeople to even the sharp, calculating merchants who come calling at the mansion. So Raymond swapped the maiden training meant for his eldest son Dalek over to Anne, passed it to Tackle instead, and forced her to send him reports on Tackles every single day, because from that moment on, each day became pure, jaw-dropping madness. Raymond watched Lord Tackle hammer out brand new tools no one had ever even seen before, and they weren't the usual rare inventions. As Raymond stared at the workshop roaring with gears and machines, Anne pitching in by his side, it hit him this was the real lifeline that could finally save the territory. Meanwhile, Baron solely locks his eyes on that giant contraption and blurts, "What is this thing?" Then he whips around and Tackle, demanding, "What in the world is this thing?" Tackle grins and says, "These are lifting water wheels, power water wheels," telling them he'll start by explaining the lifting water wheel first. Then Tackle shows you how it works. He tosses the water wheel into the rushing current, and it starts spinning right away. Then it blasts the water upward, forcing it to surge to a higher level than it ever reached before. As the rushing water turns the wheel and unleashes its power, the gear snaps into a new spin, shifts its axis, and keeps whirring straight ahead, turning right toward the ground. The shaft spins, and that rod gets yanked up and slammed down over and over again. While everyone gapes at how Tackle is basically parenting like a pro, some folks joke that Crazia can play house too, and they wonder what to do next, since Dalek already knows how to swing a sword. Then the fears hit. Don't spoil the kids, and one commenter snipes that Tackle's mindset feels downright old-fashioned. That water lifts water wheel finally clicks, and they realize they can pump water up to places even higher than the river itself. Tackle reveals they can finally send water onto land that never could have been farmed until now. Raymond tells Tackle's mom that she and her husband have finally clocked it. This isn't just some kid's toy. Then Tackle leans in and says, "With this water wheel and those gears, the work that used to eat up hours of hand labor can run non-stop like, all day. If they can turn it into a millstone, they could crank out flour by the ton." So someone leans in and asks Lord Tackle, "How do you think that'll help us?" Raymond pauses and lets the consequences crash through his mind. A map flashes on screen, packed with marked spots like Lax, the Orc River, Esther, and Phobos. Then the note hits hard. If one key location gets wiped out for any reason, the damage would be beyond measure, because Esther's granaries all sit in the same place, and the jump in production plus automation is what's driving the territory's economy right now. Raymond locks eyes with Tackle and says it straight. This kid clearly knows the territory's biggest problem. Tackle hits back and says, "I learned it from a book about countries that use water wheels like this." And Raymond shoots back, "So where did you really get that knowledge from?" Meanwhile, Raymond stares at Tackle and wonders if using the kid the right way in the Kyle Kingdom could help him build the territory, because the more he watches, the more that child feels different. When Raymond locks eyes on Tackle's honest face, it hits him this kid didn't dream up those inventions for fun or to chase a challenge. It's worse than that. Tackle looks like he can smell danger ahead, like he's scrambling to dodge it before it lands. And now Raymond can't stop wondering what Tackle sees in his head. Does he have some kind of magic power, like seeing the future? As Raymond watches Tackle standing there against that wild backdrop, his thoughts snap into focus like Lord Tackle is secretly shouldering some massive burden that nobody else even suspects. Raymond digs deeper into the mess because Tackle's still just a kid and there's only so much he can do alone, so adults will probably wave him off anyway. That's when Raymond locks in and decides it's his job to back Tackle, both right out in the open and hidden behind the scenes. So Raymond strides up to Tackle to hash it out, and the kid tilts his head up at him, hanging on every word. Raymond pushes them to jump in right now, seriously review the water wheel design, then crank production up fast, and Tackle agrees, instantly realizing they're about to get slammed with work. Then Tackle's face bursts with gratitude and sheer relief. He turns to Raymond and thanks him from the bottom of his heart for backing him up. Raymond flashes a grin at Tackle and gives him a quick nod like, "I hear you." The steward has sealed the deal. Then the camera swings as Tackle strides off down the mansion halls while Anne hangs nearby, watching him like something's about to happen. The very next day, Raymond's solid backing kicked off the survey of the installation site, and before long, the workshop got hit with an official order for a huge batch of water wheels. Then, just a few months later, they started rolling in one shipment after another. The Solis family hit the ground running. Tackle's father sprinted into the search for fresh wholesale customers for flour, determined not to lose a golden business chance, while Tackle's mom and Raymond dove into land development and set up the irrigation work. Tackle stands there, jaw set and eyes blazing, as he realizes history just cracked open. His first arrow has flown, the one that will reshape everything, and he steels himself inside, swearing he'll take down the 5 great calamities of the early period. Then days stacked up, and months before the great harvest finally came, people pushed through the fields across the whole territory, always building, always preparing, under that non-stop pressure. Tackle locked in, refusing to blink, even swore to himself days earlier that he wouldn't let this construction stall beat him. Tackle's flour mill, powered by a water wheel system, was already rolling along. The water wheel presentation went off without a hitch, and they were pushing new farmland and irrigation across the estuary. But just before the bumper harvest, Tackle realized there was one last goal he had to finish. See, Tackle was furious the Barney didn't scoop up a mountain of cheap wheat. The second prices crashed after that killer harvest. This was the perfect buy low, sell high chance to stack cash for coming disasters, not just sit around and wait for a famine. If that plan was going to work, he couldn't just snatch all that wheat without a reason. So he cooked up a product and made it make sense. He aimed to build dried noodles that could sit for ages, then taste amazing the moment you poured in hot water, and for wheat-based preservation, that's what he'd use as his answer. In the Solis Barney kitchen, Tackle came in hot and greeted Miguel, the head chef. Miguel, broad-shouldered and dark-haired, jerked his gaze up and demanded, "So, the kid's back again?" Miguel was a soldier who'd fought shoulder to shoulder with Tachiel's father in the same army, and somehow even back then he cooked up magic with whatever scraps the battlefield handed him. When he got wounded and his fighting days ended, Tachiel's father invited him to become the family chef. Miguel was super close with Tackle's father and treated the kid like family with zero hesitation. So when Tackle pulled Miguel aside and asked what was wrong, he told him everything, and then admitted he'd been wondering if he could make preserved food with what they had. Tackle asked if he could borrow some ingredients, and Miguel waved him on. Then Miguel broke down the plant flour, water, and salt, rolled it out, let it dry, and admitted it was a wild idea. But now this territory could crank out a ton of flour for good. Tackle lifted those dried noodles like they were destiny, convinced Miguel was the one he needed. Because if this worked, that product could hit the battlefield for real. And Miguel wasn't just good, he was deadly with portable battlefield rations. Before he even turned 5, Tackle had already learned the hard truth. He couldn't pull it off by himself. History or modern tech knowledge didn't matter one bit. To rewrite history, he had to gather allies and bring in skilled pros who'd actually stand shoulder to shoulder with him. From that moment on, it was trial and error for the both of them. Miguel pushed and tested everything he had, tweaking salt ratios and experimenting with drying methods until it finally clicked. Tackle tore into his noodles like he was starving, but his parents had forced him to swear, no food waste. So every leftover and every botched experiment he'd cooked up came straight back to haunt his plate. And Tackle, young and miserable, had to power through meals that were genuinely tough to choke down. After weeks of that brutal grind, Tackle finally hit success, and the moment he did, he shouted that it was so worth it. Tackle's heart exploded with relief. He'd made it just in time for the big harvest, and he turned to Miguel, firing off a huge thank you for every bit of help. At the family dinner, Tackle sat there and replayed every brutal challenge he'd survived, because the Kyle Kingdom was landlocked, so hauling in ingredients for dashi was a nightmare, and this world didn't even have soy sauce or miso. If something tasted off, he knew the seasoning was the real problem. Then, at the table, someone dropped the bombshell. Clizia wanted to eat too. That's when Tackle finally got it. He needed one last push, a killer selling point that would make his father snap and take the deal. Tackle's eyes hardened the moment it clicked. Bamboo might be the answer. If bamboo tubes could double as a pantry and a cookbot, then boom, instant noodles are born, and this other world would never be the same. Because people feared monster habitats would keep growing, they started chopping bamboo like crazy and sent that bamboo out as material. The wild part? Bamboo is unstoppable when you leave it alone. It spreads and spreads until it takes over everything. Green bamboo was ridiculously easy to snag. Just head south of the Esther territory into that massive bamboo forest, which also doubles as the border with the demon realm, where the monsters lurk. Probably because the images weren't working, people barely demanded bamboo, so there was more than enough. That's when Tackle decided to go all in and start making cup noodles. Punch a hole in a cut bamboo tube and cram in dried noodles, pour in water and Miguel's special seasoning. Then boil the whole thing over a fire. When it was done, they dug in hot soup, tasty noodles, and the smell hit like a punch. Tackle thought it sounded like an omakuji fortune, but chaos hit at one point. The noodles flat out refused to come out. Then Miguel swooped in, helped him out, and just like that, the cup noodles got finished safely. Farrell hummed away in the kitchen like nothing could go wrong, and Tackle clutched that bamboo noodle cup like it was gold, grinning, sure his father would take one look and snap into wide-eyed shock. He'd call them omakajiri noodles, and now he could pitch them to his father as wartime logistics and disaster prep, no questions asked. Suddenly, bam! A savage crash rips through the air, and Tackle watched a bamboo cup tumble and smash to the ground. He couldn't wrap his head around what was happening. When Tackle finally pinpointed the wet green bamboo as the whole problem, frustration hit him hard, and nothing on his face gave it mercy, just pure rage at the setback. Because if he used dried bamboo as the container, the bamboo would burn up immediately. So he had to find something else that was cheap and easy to get. And after he searched and searched, he just slumped down in defeat. Fingers crossed that styrofoam hadn't simply vanished from this world. Then, after that miserable lesson, months dragged on until a whole year of booming harvest finally hit, and with it came the start of the 5 great calamities that had plagued the past. Then bam, a title card slams onto the screen, spelling out the history of the soulless barony, the omen of destruction. It says that in Kyle, year 499, autumn brought a glorious harvest, and the people cheered until the bounty went too far. Joy curdled into resentment, and just when the year of blessings started, black ash from a neighboring country began choking the skies of Esther. Out in the wheat fields, with 6-year-old Tackle riding right beside him, the Baron practically beams. At this rate, we're set for a killer harvest this year. Takiel grins and says he can't wait for the autumn harvest. Then later, the Baron checks the grain, spots something strange, and brings up ash from the Graphonia volcano, praying it won't get any worse. The air feels ominous as hell, and in this timeline, Tackle is already 6 years old. Ashfall from a tiny volcanic blast in the nearby Graphonia Empire has finally started, and Tackle has been waiting for this exact moment. Anne strides up to Tackle and tells him the proposal meeting is almost here. He nods, grateful, then gets himself ready. While he prepares, Tackle can't stop thinking about his choice. That whole asphalt mess isn't just chaos. It's his power move to force his own proposal forward. Because he knew he had to light a real sense of urgency, push that next arrow into action. And get this, according to the Barony of Suris's records, the ashfall dumped itself and then quickly died down, leaving no real damage and no major chaos. But here's the real twist: this year's harvest is about to explode into record-breaking abundance, and then the very next year slams them with a brutal famine. Tackle knows they have to beat this brutal famine, or their chance to survive what comes next will get crushed for good. Flours getting mass-produced, portable preserved foods being developed and sold, and yeah, everything's on track, but that still won't cut it, because they can't count on help from any neighboring countries or other territories. The scene cuts to 2 neighboring nobles, Viscount Caucaman and Viscount Mimabai High, standing proud with their family crests blazing, and the Solis barony's lightning growth over the last decade has them frowning like it's a threat. Yeah, someone finally answers, and another voice snaps, "Let's go." The air turns razor-thin pure tension. Meanwhile, the only friendly neighbor Cornell Barony leans even harder into farming than Esther ever does. And as for the southern Graphonia Empire, bottom line, they had to survive that brutal famine all by themselves. The story snaps to Soli's barony conference room, and Tackle is standing there like he's about to crack pure nerves. His mother and the rest of his family crowd in from every side, and the whole atmosphere hits totally different from his presentation at the water wheel. "You way more intense." Tackle suddenly realizes he's only 6 years old, and still he's about to interfere with the whole territory's rule, while someone else in the room watches, clearly worried about what he's planning to do. And honestly, Tackle is nervous as hell too. He can tell this is nothing like that water wheel presentation. They're saying the Esther territory's booming life right now isn't luck at all. It's the payoff from his parents' blood, sweat, and years of work. Back then, it was barely developed, with no real industry to speak of. When his father first got the land, all it had were scattered little towns and villages. Ordinary, unremarkable, and nowhere near special, yet. But here's the crazy part: Tackle's father is a spatial mage who can stash the equivalent of several huge trucks of goods in storage. And then there's Tackle's mother. She's an earth mage who specializes in land appraisal, so she can read the land's every secret down to its traits, and that's why his father personally brokered deals, trading with the harvests from the cultivated fields face to face. Meanwhile, his mother unearthed and built up the mines, and the money started rolling in. Fast then she poured everything into new development projects, sparking a chain reaction of growth that turned the Esther territory into a place people claimed was even better than some of the higher-ranking viscounties. Turns out some nobles were snickering at the Baron for playing the merchant, but the crazy part is this: when the Lord himself rolls up and handles business like a trader, it totally wins him over. And yeah, it genuinely looks like he likes it. In the conference room, someone cheers about this year's huge harvest and how the villagers can't stop smiling, and Raymond steps in to congratulate Tackle's father while Tackle stands there, stunned, thinking about how his parents built this whole territory in a single generation and wondering if his proposal will finally get the green light. They break down the harvest like this. Farmers turn part of their grain over as tax, then use what's left to grab seeds for next year and food for their own families after that. They sell the rest to rake in real income. But listen, an amazing harvest can turn into a nightmare if it's too big, and that's exactly why Tackle's freaking out. The story explains that in this world, taxes are based on land size, not how much you harvest. A huge crop makes the farmer's share jump, while a bad one cuts it down. Same with the Lord. No, the stakes get even bigger. If the harvest swells too much, grain prices crash, and just like that, the farmer's income drops instead. Someone shoots back that a bumper harvest just sounds like exactly what everyone's been waiting for. Then Tackle steps up with his proposal and lays it out, saying he's come with something that'll make them face the problems a huge harvest can bring. Someone leans in and demands that Tackle spill his reasons and those 3 points right now. Raymond clocks the play. It'll turbocharge House Esther's power and give them the timing to move before the next crisis hits. Then boom, a bumper harvest lands in their lap, and it's the perfect moment to surge forward with the 3 measures Tackle is about to lay out. The Baron finally leans in and says, "All right, go on, talk." Meanwhile, someone else throws their hands up like, "What is Tackle even going on about now?" And Tackle immediately kicks off his very first point about dried noodles. He tells everyone to stash dried noodles over the stockpiles to brace for a food crisis, and with grain prices finally dropping, it's the perfect moment to start cooking up preserved food. The crew is still cranking out the new development, and they're even crafting dried noodles made for the battlefield then. Tackle snaps open a document and shows it to his mother. They're also thinking about paying farmers whose earnings have crashed so they can step into this work. Tackle acts like everyone already got the memo, and then he rips into the second point, breaking it down piece by piece. They built a Jusu granary to stash grain for bad harvests, and even set up the whole system to make sure it all ran. He whips out a diagram that lays it all out. Farmers hand their extra grain to the Jusu. The barony buys it at the same usual price, and that move cuts down the flood into the market so prices don't crash and incomes don't tank. Meanwhile, that stored grain sits ready, then gets doled out the moment an emergency finally strikes. The farmers still pocket their usual income by dumping their surplus, and the barony can even order it stored in the Jizu for free, while the Baron can't help but find the whole plan wildly fascinating. Raymond jumps in to help, and Tackle thanks him like always. Then someone in the room mutters that this isn't so bad after all, and adds that Tackle will soon win the Lord's gratitude and loyalty too. Tackle finally realizes this is the real deal now, so he charges straight to the third and final point. The Baron drops a bombshell. He's read books that swear small-scale asphalt is the first sign before a huge eruption ever goes down. Tackle warns that if a massive eruption hits a neighboring country, the fallout will wreck their crops and famine will slam them. Someone snaps to attention the moment famine gets mentioned. Tackle tells them to snatch up this year's grain while the prices are low because it's the perfect way to build a stash and make a smart bet at the same time. The Baron wears a worried frown, and Tackle can't swear to it. But he's pretty sure it's coming. He knows the book story is a reach, and even if he blurted out that he knows the future, they'd never believe him. He's been writhing in worry over this for years, and this is the only shot he's got to sway them, so Tackle keeps pushing, insisting that even if there's no famine, they should still roll out commercialization as one of the industries they build for the future. Tackle stands in the grand hall as beams of light crash down around him. Then he yells, demanding that everyone believe him. Then, out of nowhere, his mom's voice bursts through the air and yells his name. Tackle's mother comes charging in, snatches him up into a tight hug, and tells him he's truly something, her voice shaking with raw emotion. Tackle snaps to attention, realizes what's happening, and blurts out to his mother in shocked disbelief. She drags him in tight, pours out her gratitude for how hard he's been thinking about them, and tells him to step back, because she's got him covered for what comes next. He's gonna swallow her words, line by line, and then Baron Solely steps in. Cops announce his afternoon plans are getting tossed, and he snaps that they're about to dig out the truth. Then, at last, everything starts moving forward. Tackle reels in the thought that maybe he just finally did something for his parents, like in the picture where he's right there at his father's side, tiny next to the Baron, because that gut punch feeling had been chewing on him for ages, sitting in the back of his mind for a long, long time. He can't stop thinking about that earlier version of himself from the last timeline, the one who looked at his chance and did absolutely nothing. Maybe it was because he felt crushed by his brilliant brother and his parents' expectations. Or maybe he was simply terrified to even try, so he kept bolting until the moment hit, and it was game over. And Nishita Takahiro faced the same cruel truth. No matter how much he'd been given, he couldn't give anything back before they were ripped apart for good. Tackle stares into the past as Nishita Takahiro, just a humble Japanese salaryman who lived easy and loved every day with his wife, even though they never had children. Growing up, he got bullied every day, and it carved this mindset into him, always spiraling over what everyone else thought and never once finding the nerve to speak up for himself. Then the very results he busted his tail for got snatched by his own colleagues, and that betrayal knocked him clean off the road to promotion before he even realized it. He'd turned into one of those middle-aged neat guys, stuck at home every single day devouring light novels like it was the only thing keeping him alive. After 20 years of marriage, his wife Yuko stepped out to work because their household had lost its breadwinner, and she pushed him on, telling him she knew he could do something incredible to grab a real opportunity instead of a lazy little job, and to keep moving forward because he kept leaning on her like that. Then his wife crumpled from pure exhaustion and stress, the exact torment he'd been fighting inside himself. When he clawed his way out of his coma and finally saw her gaunt, terrified, and staring at him like he was slipping away, he broke down in tears. And man, he hated himself for every second he dragged her into this. After he finally woke up, he threw himself into the grind, scrambling for any job he could snag, no matter what it was. Little by little, his money stopped wobbling and his wife's bright smile came rushing back. But even at nearly 50, he kept driving himself into the ground, harder than he should. This time, he crumpled in defeat and walked away from his wife, never to return. See, Nishida and Tackle, same dude, just two faces. He couldn't bring himself to step forward, kept bolting instead of confronting the truth, and by the time he finally dared to look ahead, it was already way too late. But now it's totally different. Two people's regrets are fused inside him, and two people's hopes for the future burn there too. Piece by piece, he twists the world, fixing it. Finally, one shot at a time. Meanwhile, the autumn of Kyle year 499 rolls in, and right on cue, harvest season is about to kick off. Kyle calendar 499, and at last early autumn hit, and the great harvest season roared to life. The wheat in this world ripens a little later than the one he knew back in his past life, and the farmers couldn't help but celebrate at the absurd bumper crop they were finally staring down. But that joy didn't last. Anxiety crept in fast as worried voices started screaming about sinking market prices. Tackle's mother and Raymond cut the tension before it even started issuing a decree to build granaries, and the farmers finally stopped panicking. By then, granary construction was already rolling out across the whole region, one decision after another, so maybe someone had a plan like this brewing from the start. Either way, Tackle couldn't help but grin, because they bought every word he said and scrambled to prepare. Then, out of nowhere, grain prices crashed hard, exactly like the historical records and barons had predicted. Tackle's mom and Raymond moved, instantly buying the farmer's grain at way above market price, then going up in a sprint. Brand new dry noodle processing plants rising beside the fresh water wheels across the domain, and even farmers whose earnings had tanked getting snapped up to drive the growing mass production of processed goods and preserved foods. At first, Tackle just watched from the sidelines, but the second asphalt hit, his eyes lit up, and he saw a gold-level investment chance. Then he declared, "My time is here." After the market crash, he darted around non-stop, eyes blazing as his siblings watched and realized he was holding strong, because this was the real punch of spatial magic, spatial storage. Even Tacklet was already plotting to sell processed food to the royal capital's knights. Backstage, he snapped up wheat from other territories for cheap, all while keeping Baron Solis's name buried and out of sight. Sure, it looked like a simple market boost, but Raymond clocked the truth. Tackle was running it perfectly. Baron Solis was practically glowing with good spirits when he yanked Tackle into his office, grinning as the father promised him, if they raked in profit from wheat and locked away preserved food, Tackle would get 10% of everything. Tackle's mother gasped in shock, and Chibi Tackle erupted with joy like it was a sign that everything was finally going to work out. Later, Tackle admitted he tried to recreate a scene from his favorite light novel, and his mom hit record so he'd have it saved for good. He might have done it on a whim, but the joy hit him so hard he couldn't stop smiling. But his father was utterly disgusted by the whole mess. Baron Soli insisted it was perfectly normal for a lord after all. He figured it was fine since they acted like total strangers when they were out in the world. People were buzzing with doubts, wondering if something like this really had to be handled by those twin maids with short blue hair. He kept fretting that the grain market would collapse everywhere, and his father still demanded to know if this was truly safe. Tackle said it was all just part of the territory, so he'd keep letting them buzz around outside the city. Someone immediately chimed in that it sounded awesome. Then Tackle's mother realized this was the perfect opening to line up the third arrow, and Tackle silently locked in his resolve. Later on, Tackle marched up to his parents and asked, straight up, if he could go check out the granary construction site. But Baron Solis shot back that Tackle was just 6 years old, too young to risk the dangerous outside, and insisted it was no job for the Lord's son to go chasing around. Tackle begged his dad and mom with all his heart, insisting he really wanted to go. His mother shot him a question, and Tackle leaned in to explain why, only to start his reasoning from there. He and his brother would run the domain's inner workings from here on out, and he swore he'd get it right by listening to the people face to face, because sure, he'd pitched a granary for them, but he couldn't shake the worry that he didn't truly know how the people who'd live under his policy would feel. Then someone calls out why it has to happen right now, and the dark-haired man snaps back that even the grandest excuses can't erase one truth. Tackle is feeding on the farmer's fears. Tackle won't take excuses. He demands to see with his own eyes how the villagers are truly handling it. Afterward, Tackle sits back and replays his prep in his head. He even deletes the childish phrases he used on purpose earlier, so his words come out way more adult, and he smugly tells himself it's the perfect excuse. Then someone leans in and asks, "That's it?" And the real fight hits him from the inside out. Wondering what he's really missing, he spots that weird smile on her face and blurts out what kind of reaction that even is. She's not flat out rejecting him, but something feels off, and suddenly he can't help thinking his desperation is the real thing shining through. Then Tackle blares out, "I want to see the outside world too," and rants that he wants to witness the land of Estel his mom and dad fought to make prosperous, because it's not fair that only his brother gets to go. But Tackle suddenly snaps to it and realizes he messed up. With his age clocking past 70, he accidentally blurted out an excuse he'd already shot down in his own head, super embarrassing, until someone jumped in and said, "Yeah, that's it, more like that." That's when Tackle finally clicks. If that's really his mom's switch, then he's been charging in from the wrong side this entire time. His mother nods and finally says yes, he can leave the city, but only if Raymond walks with him. Anne has to come too because safety is the absolute rule. She lays out the whole reason this is happening, because he's been sneaking off with Dalek on his own. Lately then Chris cuts her off mid-sentence. Someone blurts out, "Stop!" the second he starts, and Chris just stares back like, how could anyone not get it when a younger brother is desperate to copy his older brother? While Tackle's mom questions whether he's truly unhappy with her permission, someone in the background shoots a warning. Don't you dare defy her. Then Tackle's father gives in and agrees. Tackle nods and tells him she's got it, warning him to stay out of Raymond's way and keep quiet on site. So Tackle finally got what he wanted. He got to tag along with Raymond on his inspection. The whole crew pulls out, and Raymond, Anne, and Tackle head through the streets with their escort. Raymond leans in and tells you how monsters and bandits roam this world like it's their playground. Even when they stay inside their own territory, danger still lurks around every corner. But with the Lord's young son set to leave, they had no choice, so they packed even more guards around him. So Tackle shoots out an apology because they just piled on more work. Still, Tackle grinned at the chance to finally leave town because they only let him tag along with Raymond for 3 villages and 1 town near Est, all reachable on a single-day trip. Tackle leans out of the carriage window, shouts to his father and mother that he's finally leaving, and under Raymond's watch, the inspection runs smooth as the carriage pulls away. At the very first village they hit, Tackle messed up again by accident, but Raymond swooped in from the next stop, explaining everything clearly with maps and diagrams of the old territory. Meanwhile, Tackle hung back, dying to see what Anne would do after that wink, while Raymond acted way too sure that both of them would stay silent to his parents about his rampage. Then the third arrow plan. Our last shot at stopping the Great Famine kicked in fast and turned the tide in no time. Raymond swung in with the third arrow to stop the trouble, and the inspection wrapped up without a hitch. Tackle shouted one more time for his father and mother, begging them to answer. In the late autumn of year 499, Kyle arrives and Tackle proudly raises his jaw-dropping turnip triumph, flashing off his incredible harvest for everyone nearby to see. Him. And when they lay eyes on it, both of them snap into intense emotion, clearly shaken by what's unfolding in front of them. Right then, someone jokes that Tackle's about to earn the title Farmer Baron, and turns to Chris like, "So when did your family become farmers?" The chat goes wild. People say it's totally too much, especially with all that empty mansion space getting swallowed up for this. And Tackle just keeps waving that turnip in the air, grinning as he raves that they're ridiculously easy to grow, and you can even munch the leaves too. To fend off the coming food shortages, he went all in on turnips, and turns out they're grown here, but only as lowly animal fodder, which felt like a total waste. And get this, there's even a little story about the brilliant strategist Yu Jilyang tending turnips in his own camp, and when someone brings up what they like, they admit they're hooked on Romance of the Three Kingdoms too. So this is how Tackle stitched it all together. First, while he was inspecting things, he ordered Raymond to dig into the cultivation status of different regions, because the fastest way to learn how to grow was asking the people who already lived there. Then Tackle begged his father to track down merchants in town who could sell turnip seeds and even turnips themselves, making sure to put in the request through his mother first, of course. And he even hauled Miguel in, demanding he hunt down mouth-watering cooking tricks and whip up recipes. Then Tackle sifted through every scrap they brought back. And now his dinner tables are packed tight with turnips. They're gonna scatter the seeds all over the territory during bad harvest seasons, using the stocked seeds to keep everyone alive. While the whole compilation machine churned in the background, Tackle kept pushing forward. He was running trial cultivation experiments. Anne blurts that she's got mud all over his face. Then she fires back saying his bodyguard's doing way too much for a bodyguard. Tackle braced for Anne's brutal scolding, but then surprise, she's actually rolling up her sleeves and helping with the harvest. Tackle leans into his brother and asks, Are you coming to harvest with us too? After a split-second stall, his brother finally caves and agrees. Then Hill stands on a hill above the fields, sweating at the thought that being invited to a famine would turn into a nightmare fast. He's thrown everything he's got into the fight. So he straight up dares the Great Famine to roll in and try to take him on. Kyle Calendar 500 slams into the world, and with it comes doom, because the black arm of the mountain god's wrath rips across the border and smothers the kingdom south, unleashing total heavenly disaster. When the dark clouds finally drift away and don't drop a single merciful drop, the land turns to dust, people starve, and desperate hunger drives them into the streets. Even the hearts in Griffonia feel it. Rage boils as the mountain god shows nothing but unforgiving wrath. In the spring of Kyle Calendar 500, in the city of Est, everything is about to ignite. Young Tackle leans into his mother and blurts, "Will the sky turn all black again today?" His mother confirms it, and all that tacky fear about whether he'll be stuck in the dark forever vanishes, because she reassures him, everything's going to be okay. He promised that the Lord's blessings would lift them and everyone else too, and then, a month later, the cloudy sky finally cracked open into bright blue. Everyone cheers as the long-awaited sunlight finally hits, and the dead, dry ground starts to wake up, plants pushing through like they're fighting back. But no matter how bright the sky gets, if the rain won't come, the crops will start dying, and dread creeps into every heart all over again. And through it all, Tackle's mother clocks the shift instantly. She snaps into action, shouting at her workers to fire up every water-lifting wheel, then orders the sluice gates flung open wide and demands they flood the fields with as much water as they can. He makes them adjust the sluice gate, even if it only nudges the dwindling river into the irrigation ditches, and the workers snap to attention and start right away. While she watches the operation play out, the mother can't shake what her child warned her. This is the exact omen of a coming poor harvest. She knows other families in the basin are thirsty too, but she refuses to let the river run dry completely. The mother can't stop replaying it. If they'd missed the watermill, if the emergency stockpiles hadn't been ready, that child would have been swallowed by disaster. While she worries, young Tackle drags Raymond in and tells the steward to keep him posted on everything, every update. Even the tiniest shift, even stuff that looks completely unrelated. Raymond snaps to attention, calls him Lord Chris, and promises he's got it. Then Hill slams the decision down and declares, "Do what needs to be done right now." The mother's orders are carried out at once across the land, and in every district where the water finally hits, the farmers burst into cheers while she and Raymond unleash proclamations all over the territory through the executive branch. He obsessed over cutting the tax burden and rerouting grain from the granaries. And just like he planned, it calmed the people's nerves. So in the regular conference room, Baron Soli stood up and said everything was going great. Raymond confirms it, and the farmers swear they'll just trim their living costs a little. The Baron agrees they can't drop their guard, but he also insists they've still got plenty of wiggle room in reserves and money. Meanwhile, Tackle catches every word and starts praying they might finally survive this crisis. In the hallway after it all, Tackle stood there with a storm of doubt in his chest, replaying the moment and wondering if his judgment was even right. He kept getting this good feeling from the scraps of info he'd been piecing together. But the truth is, his anxiety wouldn't quit until someone finally confirmed it for him. Now that the confirmation finally landed, Tackle's whole body flooded with overwhelming relief. He'd survived the first huge disaster. In the present timeline, Baron Solis gets fresh reports on how the territory is doing. Turnip cultivation is thriving all over the land. Tackle's mother walks straight up to the Baron and says they'll face winter with peace of mind. Everyone's grateful for him. Then young Tackle blazes in with excited praise for his father. Turns out their territory didn't just pull off success, they're even tossing food to the neighbor that got rich by gambling on speculation. And it's the kind of turnaround that could finally cool the tension between them. They've clawed their way out of both a failed harvest's poverty and a bad harvest's famine. Out of the 5 big disasters from the last timeline, only 2 are left standing, and after the meeting finally ends, Tackle hurls himself back to his room and studies his timeline documents. Tackle strolls down the hallway when, right out of his father's office, voices suddenly burst into the air. His thoughts spill out, the exhaustion finally crashing into him now that they dodged that brutal bad harvest. And the guy still hasn't been able to truly rest then. He laughs through the dark, saying today he'll either sleep easy or work himself to death. and get reborn in another world. Even dying from overwork isn't funny, then Tackle clocks it. That weird behavior is exactly what the earlier scene was trying to show. From inside the office, he hears someone raging over the turnip baron insult, groaning about being stuck suffering like this, and begging no, pleading for it to finally stop. Tackhill slams the door on the idea. Not my fault. Then, with a shaky little add-on at the very end, he hedges. In the year 500 of the Kyle calendar, someone stumbles on Tackle in an absolute shocker right before everything goes sideways. Stuck in a bizarre pose inside his room, he suddenly freezes straight up. Total shock hits him like a punch. And the maid blurts out that, "Ugh, the other maids aren't cute at all, so why would anyone say that out loud?" Meanwhile, another voice cuts in, asking what the big diplomatic drama is really about, and whether it's because Taka's stuck studying, or what on earth he's so worried about. Turns out Tackles started digging through documents and maps tied to the whole turnip mess. In the last timeline, famine wrecked everything. Grain prices shot through the roof, war brewed, and relations with the neighbors basically collapsed. But this time, their land is self-sufficient, so those clashes never even start. Plus, they're handing out free grain and even offering to sell turnips just to keep the peace. Still, the ties with the Gorman Viscounty out west kept crumbling after the steward of that arrogant Viscount pitched an offer of turnips. It got shut down cold. The Viscount didn't just complain, he condemned the whole scheme as despicable, calling it the kind of greed that exploits a disaster to hoard food and rake in profits through speculation beneath any true nobleman. Then this dark-haired guy bluntly asks whether a nobleman should even be eating animal feed, and the narrator jumps to how Viscount Hiorami from the east is stuck in the same mess. People are tearing him apart just as badly. And the backlash doesn't stop there. The Viscounts snap back that the upper class has no business with what the lower class does, only for the complaining to explode again when drought hits and they start fighting over water rights. Meanwhile, the document pins Kyle year 5-6 of the Solis family, and it spells out how that proud young light swordsman walked straight into an ally's trap and wound up all alone, isolated. Tackhill stares into the void of the day his family vanished, because in just 5 short years, that same nightmare will come knocking again, and he can't stop counting down. His brother Dalek was a ruthless swordsman who saved soldiers and fought like a storm. Then one day the light finally died, and it never came back. Yet even with the power gap, it still didn't steal his life. But if only his allies hadn't stabbed him in the back. In the farming villages of the neighboring territories, starvation swallowed whole families, and the broken, desperate refugees poured into the cities screaming with pure, furious resentment. Then winter finally slammed down in Kyle's calendar year 501, and the food crisis for both families hit a total deadlock. People ditched their farms overnight and bolted for the Estel territory. Even with everything falling apart, Viscount Gorman didn't budge. His attitude stayed rock solid. Tackle's parents were losing their minds, and Raymond was too. Tackle muttered that he wanted to crush the Gorman noble family, then snapped his mouth shut before the words could get out. 1 month later, things had spiraled way past control. Everything was getting worse by the day. Someone drops the word that the number of refugees is through the roof. Tackle leans toward the window and watches the crisis explode in real time, right in front of his eyes. Meanwhile, inside the Solis household, Tackle's mother lays out the city's growing security fears, and Baron Solis listens as worried voices flood in whispering that refugees are slipping into Esther. Suddenly, young Tackle bursts through the door, shouting for his mother like something just went horribly wrong. He blurted out that he had a proposal, and demanded they drag his father into the room too. Baron Solis perks up at the request, and with a sharp nod, he agrees to hear it out. Tackhill's mother lights up and cheers, saying they'll do it for sure, no questions asked. Soon, Esther's streets choke with refugees, hooded, staff-in-hand figures roaming everywhere, while the rest crumple onto the ground, spent and barely breathing. Neighboring territories have started taking refugees too. Tackhill can't stop thinking about how history twists into brand new events that never happened in the old timeline, and the fight brewing with both Viscounts and this sudden wave of refugees only proves it. But right now, he has zero clue what's about to hit next. Captain Weiss armor gleaming, ornate blade in handstands ready, and Tackhill blurts out that he had zero idea the worst flag was creeping up on him around the corner. Solis von Tackle II, son of the Solis clan that rules Esther, The Kyle Kingdom's southernmost frontier steps up and tells you his name, because right now, he's living his third life. Before all this, he was Nishida Takahiro, a Japanese salaryman so pressed for success that the spotless act he put on only raked his wife Yuko with nonstop trouble, and when he pushed himself to the breaking point to fix it, he overworked himself straight into death, leaving her shattered behind. Tackle the Solis family's second son got a second life, and then the universe hit him with one calamity after another. He watched his brother, his parents, and his sister get taken, until his whole family was gone, and when an invading army crushed him, they executed him. At least, that's what everyone thought would happen. At the instant he died, only the Lord's authority flashed into being, then space-time magic exploded. And before he could even blink, he was back as the infant Taquel, because his third life was just starting. He'd tear up the past's heartbreaking story and rewrite it from the ground up so his family could finally be safe. Then boom, he unleashed space-time magic again, rewinding his fate back to when he was Nishita, all so he could finally bring joy to his beloved wife Yuko. It's year 500, and the Kyle calendar's been ticking like crazy. Taki is 8 now, and the kids are throwing down a celebration because he finally finished all his daily assignments. And because his last lives as Nishita and Tackle already loaded him with knowledge, he sprints through every morning like it's nothing since. In this world, noble schooling only runs until around age 15. And in his third timeline, he's already finished that entire curriculum from before. So his new life is getting an explosive start. He asks if Tackle's about to leave, and someone confirms, yep, he's heading out. Right then, another voice pops in, offering to tag along with him. Young Tackle is gearing up to leave when Anne stands right beside him in her maid uniform. Then she suddenly surges forward and offers to grab Lord Tackle's coat. Tackle sweeps her off with a sharp, "I'm fine." And before she can argue, the household staff crowds around the young lord as he readies to leave. Suddenly, Tackle's siblings hoist him up in a playful burst. Then his brother grins and asks, "You heading out again?" The narrator points to the eldest son, Solus von Dalek, just 11, and then someone calls to his brother, while Dalek smirks that the prodigy cleared his assignments in record time again today. Dalek points out that's exactly what Tackle is saying. But really, Tackle's just unreal at everything. And Dalek immediately turns the knife by asking what that makes him look like. Tackle tries to answer, but it comes out stiff and awkward. Then the story snaps back to the old timeline. Tackle idolized someone so hard he could never measure up, and that crushed confidence kept coming back every time. Meanwhile, she was already a legend in the making. By 13, her sword skills were downright unreal, and by 14, she'd fought her first battle. By 16, her martial fame had spread so far that the neighboring lands started getting wary of her talent and her killer charisma. Now, you watch a female warrior lock in and unleash some brutally fierce combat. Just like that, someone blurts, "What's wrong?" and realizes Tackle's been staring straight at their face. Tackle's stomach drops because he knows this future is one he has to rip apart, since if history keeps marching, his brother dies in battle 5 years from now. The story suddenly swings into a playful jab. Someone calls out Takiel for hiding secrets again. So Takiel panics, blurs out a denial, and insists there's absolutely nothing to see. After a wild journey, they finally roll up to the Est City Special Refugee Camp sector. He's grabbing something delicious from a street stall on the way home. Tackle takes a breath and admits things are finally settling down. And he gives full credit to everyone for making it happen. The narration lays out how Estel kept its people fed and safe, spinning water wheels for the water supply, then rolling out preserved foods and public granaries to stop famine before it ever struck. Last year, down on Kyle Kingdom's southernmost edge, the ground started shaking. Grifonia's volcano blew its top. Then hit after hit of disaster followed. A brutal drought, and towns in Vi County to the east and west watched their crops collapse. Refugees with nowhere to run started flooding into Estrait, into the city, spilling in by the thousands. Tackle can't shake the thought that if the city gets flooded with refugees, the streets will tip into chaos. Plus, he simply can't bring himself to abandon people who stumble in starving and freezing. Refugees who'd been scattered all across the city are finally being herded into one spot. Now they're getting the help they desperately need, and Tackle's modern know-how sparks the fourth move, a full-on refugee relief plan. With Stuart Raymond calling the shots, they set up a designated area with temporary housing and food lines that actually keep coming, and the moment those dried noodles drop, everyone's hooked, especially when warm soups hit the table. Tackle tells them to hit the reception office again today, just to be safe, and Anna nods along. At the refugee camp registration office, the staff bark instructions as the refugees pour in, forcing everyone into neat lines. Because every wall is plastered with signs screaming the same rule, registration is mandatory. Clear? That bright blonde registration worker settles into her chair, ready to slam through the newcomers. Then she waves the next refugee forward and snaps. All right, I'm starting your registration now, demanding their name, gender, age, former job, and the names of any companions. She presses them on where they came from. And the refugee says they're from a village east of Esther, so Claire leans in, determined, and writes every detail down as she goes. Then Claire leans in and confirms registration's officially done. She hands over a registration tag and tells them, "You'll need this when you start jobs like refugee camp work or food distribution, so don't you dare lose it no matter what." Then he jumps in, tells Tackle that because the tags are tracked by number, refugees can't trade them with anyone. And the refugee thanks them both. Like, finally, someone gets it. He lays out the whole setup, points you to the bulletin board packed with job listings, and even reveals that the refugee camp itself is staffed by hiring refugees as laborers. The refugee shoots them another grateful look and moves on, and Claire calls out the next person in line as soon as the last one steps away, telling them they can swing by the consultation desk next door anytime. If anything comes up, then the next refugee thanks her right back. But then, moments later, someone spots Lord Tackle slipping into the office. Today, a staff member leans in and praises Claire's awesome work, like it's the best thing ever. Claire whirls around and there's the young lord shouting her name at the top of his lungs. A huge, shadowy figure steps in to greet Lord Tackle too, and when Claire finally speaks, she stammers out her thanks like she can barely breathe, totally flustered by his presence. Refugee women at the reception office crowd around Tackle, tears in their eyes as they bombard him with gratitude, praising him not just for pulling them out of refugee life, but for paying them real wages too. And one of them swears she truly has no idea how to thank him enough. Then someone calls out Tackle, noticing what he just said, and Tackle snaps back, completely spaced out, spinning around like he's lost, asking where whatever he's looking for even is. But the moment people realize the word spread about a Solis prodigy getting involved, everything spirals fast inside. Tackle starts freaking out, because this is a seriously ugly turn. Suddenly, a staff member snaps and yells at Tackle and Anne, straight up dragging them with scolding words. He shoots him a warning, tells Tackle he's been explicitly told not to mess around here, then orders him to make it right by putting in the work. Tackle scrambles to apologize on the spot. Anne jumps in too, apologizing and admitting that everyone already knows Tackle's status. He even started the relief plan. And while Tackle beats himself up for going too far, Anne just laughs it off in that painfully awkward way. Later, while they're strolling through the camp, someone calls out, asking the big question. "How's everything going at the reception office?" The staff member nods and says the refugees are picking up their jobs fast, and the amount they can take on each day keeps climbing higher and higher, alongside the folks hired from the refugees themselves. Meanwhile, Claire pours her heart out, saying every soul here is grateful to the Lord and to Sir Tackle, because the Soli family didn't just feed the refugees warm, delicious meals, they even helped them land jobs, and the moment lands on a smiling refugee mother holding her child. Claire keeps saying, over and over, that she grew up in an orphanage, yet somehow they still trusted her with a job this huge. Tackle calls her name. Claire snaps back, realizes she's been talking too long, and blurts out an apology. She's getting back to work. Then Anne climbs up to a higher spot and glares down at the registration area, telling Claire he's pumped to work with her just like always. Claire lights up and fires back a blazing confirmation. The reception office is kicking off everything at once because their duties are huge and the processing is a nightmare. But those functions are the key to the coming calamity, and when someone says they should step in and help, the next person jumps right on it. Refugees spill in when the line stretches out. Someone shouts for everyone to keep following because they're finally on the move. And the mission isn't just survival. It's also locking in the personnel they need. Those registration tags weren't even built for this. They were originally designed by Carl from the workshop for a totally different mission. Tackle snaps to it, seeing just how unstoppable Claire is at her job. He throws her name into the ring as a future manager. The wooden registration tag gleams with handmade precision, stamped with the Soli family name like a promise carved in wood. Tackle can't stop thinking about the huge shift in his life lately because the one who used to play chaperone has turned into the person who gets him best, right up there with Raymond. Lately, instead of snapping at him like before, she studies him with real respect. Even if he's 10 years younger and Tak can't help but think, please, stop bowing so hard, because the Ice Woman doesn't seem like she's Ice Woman anymore. And now he's Tackle's loyal ally, a real rock of support. Then just days later, as everything in the refugee relief effort seems to run smooth, a sickening problem hits. A formal notice drops from the Gorman Viscount family, demanding that every refugee from their Viscount territory be shipped right back. Until now, most of the refugees had been dragged in from faraway places like the Viscount Gormans and Viscount Hioremes domains, and the Solis family helped everyone just the same, no matter where they came from, until that directive flipped the rules, and now they can't treat them the way they used to. In Viscount Gorman's domain, everyone's left with nothing but soup kitchens and refugee camp help, no job referrals at all, and that's the very best the Solis family can pull off under these brutal circumstances. With no way to check a single story at the camp, they take refugees at their word. Everyone knows it. And once word spreads through rumors that Viscount Gorman's lands are trouble, the moment people start registering, nobody dares to say they're from there. A few days later, right outside the registration office, staff shout that food will be everywhere and everyone should line up to finish registration. And Tackle confesses he's been quietly feeding that rumor to the refugees himself, praying it keeps everything running smooth. He shouts to the crowd, telling everyone outside the Esther domain, "Don't hesitate, jump in and register." Then he leans in and says they'll only ask for your name and which town or village you came from. One person shoots back a firm yes, and the moment another person says, "Excuse me," they push right through as they come closer. Then a pack of mercenaries barrels into the registration area, all led by a blonde man, and right there with them is a hooded figure plus a young kid too. One of them steps forward and says they were hired by Viscount Gorman as mercenaries. But then he leans in and asks if they'll still get in on the food distribution. Tackle can't help but think, we're being way too real about all this. He calls them out straight away, asking if every last one of them is a mercenary hired by Viscount Gorman, then pushes to figure out the right way to lead them. The hooded figure snaps that Viscount Gorman threw them out, calling them just another useless freeloader, and says the contract was cut short after the latest incident. Then Tackle grins and tells them it won't be a problem. He tells them they must have gone through hell just to get here, and if they check in at the reception desk, they'll get food immediately. He barks for everyone to line up, then registers them one after another. The hooded figure narrows their eyes at Tackle, muttering that they're in his debt like he just owes them one. A few hours later, he's busy clearing the used dishes after helping out at the distribution. Tamondamin. It all clicks. She finally recognizes him as the same guy from before. The dark-haired man claims he overheard this at the reception how Tackle personally designed the relief program for the Lord's son, the one who tackles the trouble in this domain. The man finally snaps, yeah, it's true after all. And he grumbles that he'll get scolded again for not acting like a proper noble. He cracks a laugh and admits, straight up, he doesn't look like he belongs. The dark-haired man swallows his pride, apologizes for how rude he acted earlier, then admits he heard the relief system was Takyul's idea, and he's genuinely blown away. The dark-haired man steps in, flashes his confidence, and introduces himself as Vice Schwarzfalk. Takyul flashes a warm smile, says, "Nice to meet you," then introduces himself as Takyul Baron Soli's second son. Weiss steps forward and, on behalf of all 30 members of his mercenary crew, throws out a heartfelt thanks because even though he's still young, they've already handed him the reins as captain of the two-headed hawk mercenaries. Tackle claims they all rise to help when trouble hits. But inside, the moment he hears Weiss Schwarzfalk, recognition slams into him. Weiss admits so humiliating that in Gorman Vi County there was even a public sign banning help to outsiders, so he couldn't get a single bite in any town or village and barely scraped his way here, and Takyul can't shake it. Weiss the Blackhawk sounds way too familiar. So he says, I see. So Weiss is on the hunt for a fresh employer inside the Griffonia Empire. Weiss admits he's on a mission chasing a new employer cutting through the Esther territory and pushing past the border toward the Griffonia Empire. Then Tackle's eyes widened in full shock. Suddenly, Tackle snaps back to a crucial memory and his face drains of color as pure shock hits. It smashes into him like a freight train suddenly. His memories come rushing back all at once. That mercenary captain in front of him is Weiss Graphonia's Black Hawk, the very man who'll rise to command the Northern Expedition Army and become the ever-victorious general, and in just 12 years, he'll invade the kingdom of Kyle and seize the Esther domain. Meanwhile, Weiss clocks Takiel's weird acting and snaps, asking if he's pushing himself too hard, but the dark-haired guy with them brushes it off fast, thanking Weiss for the plate only for Takiel to keep spiraling, because this is the very same man who wiped him out in the previous timeline. Takiel forces himself to straighten up and thanks them again. But inside his head, he's spiraling back to that execution scene, the one where a bearded guy stole his attention so hard he barely even clocked who was really there. When he finally tried to deliver the surrender message, his thoughts were already slipping away, and that bearded man's face is starting to melt into nothing. Then Weiss leans in and tells Tackle, if there's anything we can do to repay you, don't hold back, ask us anytime. Takiel's panic smashes straight through the roof. He can't take it anymore, so he desperately wants to shout at Weiss, don't go to the Griffonia Empire, because he'll spill everything right there. But Tackle snaps, this is an emergency. They've got to whip up a plan right now. Weiss stares up at him, thrown off by how hard that young lord's suddenly pushing. Later, Raymond rushes in to apologize for grabbing Tackle on such short notice, but Tackle just waves it off and says it's totally fine. As the two of them stride through the hallway, Tackle blurts that he wants to propose something to his parents immediately, but his thoughts won't line up. He hurls a shout at Raymond, begging him to lend a hand. And Raymond answers instantly, no hesitation at all, then tackles him with non-stop thanks. Raymond basically snapped into motion like he accepted it at lightning speed. In the next room, someone yells that Tackle's drink is finally ready. Raymond makes up an excuse, slips away to brew tea, and as he sets the cup down, he tells Tackle with a calm grin, rush it, and you'll pay for it. Raymond snaps at Tackle to calm down as the young lord lifts his cup and takes a sip of tea. Tackle slumps into the chair, fighting to get his mind back together. While Raymond looms nearby, he fires the question at him and demands, so, explain the overview first, just please. Start from the beginning. Tackle snaps back that he's got two big proposals ready to throw on the table. Tackle tells everyone the real first issue isn't politics. It's the refugees' future, because keeping up support for this many people with things the way they are is going to get brutal. So the refugees beg the Solis family for help, and he figures they'll bring them in as new subjects and flip this disaster into a chance to crank up the domain's productivity. Raymond fires the question at Tackula, what does he think about all this? And from his spot in the room, Raymond says the administration already shares the same belief. Then, he leans in and demands to know exactly how Tackle plans to take them in. Take suggests they take on Mount Tagon, grab volunteers, push forward, and plant a brand new settlement there, turning it into the next frontier. From up top, you can even spot the tents sprawled across the land like the future has already arrived. Tackle says that one day in the future, he wants to turn it into a base to push into the demon frontier. Yeah, it's terrifying. But that place is packed with insane treasure. He whips out a map for Raymond, tracing the line where Hiorimi's Vi County crashes into Estel's territory, and he points straight at the demon frontier like it's a target on a board. Then he leans in and tells him that if they want some remote hideout that won't be spotted from either side, Tagon is the perfect choice. Out on the frontier, bandits and monsters never quit yet. Tagon's defenses are rock solid, so you can finally breathe easy. Raymond thinks it over and says, wait, if I'm going to do this, I should tackle your second proposal first, then hear what comes next. Raymond fires off his second proposal asking Tackle if he knows that Vice Captain Weiss's mercenary crew, the twin-headed Hawks, are staying in Est for now, and Tackle snaps back. Yeah, he's already heard. Then Tackle blurts out that he's crossed paths with them again and again, because their captain is absurdly skilled, and every single member is a top-tier elite soldier. The Solis family doesn't get to slack off defending the border is their job. so they're always pushing their forces to grow stronger and stay ready. Takil knows that when someone invites a mercenary crew of that caliber, they usually slam the door, so he refuses to let this perfect chance slip, especially since they're operating right inside his territory. Maine. Raymond can't believe the cruelty of it. He thinks this is pure meanness. Meanwhile, Tackle says they're good for now. Thanks to their grain investment, they've got the cash, and the very first plan for frontier development will demand escorts to guarantee everyone's safety. Tackle points out that beefing up their forces isn't just smart, it's a waste. Not to seize this opening. Assign them as guards for the new settlement, and get to strike 2 targets at once. He drains his tea, wipes his mouth, and declares, "That's my proposal." Then Tackle leans in and grills Raymond about what he thinks. Raymond points out that hiring 30 people is going to hit your wallet hard. Tackle realizes Raymond clocked him instantly, and Raymond fires back, asking if that's the only thing Tackle has got. Raymond suddenly clocks that Anne already filled him in on Tackle's plan, so Tackle shrugs and admits he's got a few ideas for how to cover the cost. He pitches a crazy idea. Let the mercenary crew pick up regular contracts from other clients too, not just the Baron's house, so they can juggle their finances and keep the money flowing with income from more than one source. Tackle pushes it further, begging Vice Captain Weiss to be his personal teacher so he can master swordsmanship and tactics firsthand, and he swears Weiss is the real deal, trustworthy as a person, ruthless with sword skills, sharp with military strategy, and beloved by his own men. Raymond thinks it over and nods. The basics should hold up for now. Tackle looks worried as he says that, thanks to the administration's policy, they might be able to hash it out with Lord Dalek and Lord Chris. Raymond quips that hiring a teacher is way too soon, then points out the whole process will probably begin with one terrifying question: can Weiss even be trusted? And right on cue, the parents will likely shut it down with "too early," making everyone groan in straight-up frustration at the block. Then Raymond leans in and asks Tackle straight up, what does he think the future holds for their settlement at Mount Taegun? Tackle lays out his plan in plain, unshakable terms, then reminds Raymond he's the second son, and he's got to carry the weight of the family head, his older brother. He's built a plan for a settlement that'll supercharge Esther's economy and become the shield for the southern region. Then he'll reshape and rule Taegun, period, because this place is absolutely non-negotiable, the most critical piece of his whole future. Raymond tells Tackle, "I've got this go, and let me handle the rest." And the next day, they meet in the regular meeting room. Tackle's father sits right across from him, smirking like he knows a secret, and says that Raymond told him everything, then chuckles that Tackle never stops cooking up fresh trouble. Tackle's father demands, "Are you still good with my offer?" And then slams the truth home: if this frontier boom goes massive, the barony won't be able to cough up even 10% of the profits they promised. He adds that, thankfully, the barony still has some breathing room in its finances. Then presses Tackle. Does he really grasp that this new investment will dwarf everything that came before? The father warns him that poking the Viscounts one more time could spell disaster. But Tackle's mom jumps in right away, defending him with fire. She argues that without Tackle's ideas, their whole domain would have hit the same wall as the neighboring counties, and that every win they've built up came straight from his plans. She snaps at her husband that the Viscounts are his problem to manage, and Tackle stays out of it. The father tries to speak, but he just fumbles and trails off because turns out Mom's the real powerhouse in the family. All those headaches with the 2 Viscounts, the refugee crisis, and hunting down supplies from the frontier, he'd been losing sleep over that all along, and then the father finally delivers his decision. That swordsmanship instructor request gets shot down for now, and the whole plan to run the new frontier territory gets paused because they'll wait until Tackle turns 15. He tells Takio to let Raymond handle the details, so the two of them can figure it out together, and Takio nods like, got it. But inside, he's gutted he still didn't get the instructor approved, and then his father throws in one more bombshell. As a reward for Tackle's earlier proposals, he's getting 50 gold coins, an insane fortune. The kind that's basically several years of a regular commoner's income, and his father grabs him by the moment and warns him to spend it smart. Tackle just can't look away. Those 50 gold coins whirl and spin in front of him, hypnotizing him. Even for a noble family, this is insane, way too much cash for an 8-year-old baron's son to burn without a second thought. And as soon as he sees it, His brain starts racing, hunting for exactly where the money will land next. Raymond's mother stares at the mess in silence like, "Guess we'll just have to live with this for now then." Someone chimes in, "Yeah. The swordsmanship instructor situation is brutal, but as long as Raymond's on it and the mercenary band stays put, this shouldn't become a problem." Then, Tackle breaks away from the room, shooting out excuses as he goes. But Dalek shouts out, and Cliger hesitates, watching as Chris snaps around in shock, calling his brother by name. So Tackle finally slams on the brakes and turns to look. He shoots an apology for barging in out of nowhere, with zero warning or prior check-in. Clay steps forward, declares this is her problem too, and begs to be heard right. Then her father feels trouble brewing and cuts in, tells Tackle to spill what's going on, then blurts that he's got a nasty bad feeling about this. In the hallway, Tackle stands tall beside Chris, and Dalek looms right behind him, watching. And he makes his move loud and clear. He's demanding, in full formal fashion, to become a student of a swordsmanship master. Then he snaps into action as the expression on his face flips into pure shock, because what hits him next comes out of nowhere. Tackle fires up, telling everyone with raw passion that he and his brother want to train under Commander Weiss. Then he drops into a deep bow and begs for permission. Meanwhile, Chris just stands there, completely stunned as reinforcements finally storm in to back his cause. And just like that, a Dalek shows up, shocked and scrambling at the sudden twist it didn't see coming. Then their father snaps in from the shadows, grilling them on the spot so they want to train under the boss of that mercenary crew, just the two of them. Chris stands his ground, eyes locked on the goal, pure determination blazing across his face, while the Dalek's eye shows nothing but iron resolve, hard, steady, unshakable in a smaller panel. Clesia watches with growing worry as the little sibling corners Dalek and demands, "What's hit you all of a sudden?" Then the father snaps, telling them to keep going, pointing straight at Dalek and demanding he finish his explanation. But Chris storms in and cracks open the whole breakdown of swordsmanship, because it's basically split into 9 ranks, and most people only have a hazy idea where they fit. He slaps up a pyramid diagram showing the ladder from Sword God at the peak, down past Sword Saint, Sword Demon, Sword Master, Sword Expert, Veteran, Swordsman, Training, and finally the Unaware at the very bottom. He fires up another diagram and lays it all out, straight up facts, because inside the Esther domain, nobody can top a certain skill ceiling. The Solus Barony's stacked with squad leader veterans, sure, but when it comes to Swordmasters, there are only 2 commander-class ones in the whole domain, and that number doesn't even count their father. Chris keeps driving his point with razor-cold facts. Sure, the army of Baron Solus is famous for valor, but the truth is, most of them can't actually fight with the sword. He whips around to his father and asks if that's right. Then his father nods and confirms it. Chris plows forward with his research, because now the other 2 swordmasters in the domain have been knighted and handed control of their own towns, and that makes studying under them basically impossible. Clegia's eyes go wide with shock at how relentless her brother is, and she blurts out, "Did you really dig all of that up by yourself, Chris?" Chris keeps rolling with his presentation on the Dalek, and then he drops the bomb. Dalek's only 11, yet he's way more mature than anyone else. Even as a kid, his sword skills sit on the same level as grown adults. And sure, he only just started serious sword training, but he's already climbed to the 3rd lowest rank of swordsman. Chris tells him Dalek's power doesn't stop there. His bloodline magic has only just revealed itself, bursting into rare light magic even inside the kingdom. He tells you that in the last timeline, when Dalek hit 16, he'd already climbed to Sword Saint 1 of only a few in the whole kingdom. So even in this timeline, Dalek is already flashing the same wild potential. But then Tackle catches something that chills him. Dalek is growing about 3 years faster than he ever did in the last timeline. And Chris shoots his dad a nod, recognizing the worry loud and clear. Chris's dad leans in with a new plan, straight up offering a suggestion. If the training isn't cutting it for him, he can pull strings and get someone to step in and help out. Tackle says he'll get Raymond paired up with a training partner. Then the father leans in and says, "If you're hunting a true master, I know just the kind of person who'll do the job." But Tackle's inner voice slices through the silence with brutal clarity. This plan is way too naive. Suddenly, Chris drops the truth that flips everything. Sir Weiss's swordsmanship is straight up sword demon level. and the three siblings hit full-on shock. While Chris seals the blow, Weiss is one rank above even their father. After that bombshell, the room finally quiets and Takel's mind races to process every word his brother just hit him with. Then he fires back and admits Chris was right, telling them he'll spill the review results later, so they should just wait. Chris and Klage's faces instantly light up with pure excitement at the reply. Weiss's father slams down in order to dig into Weiss and his mercenary crew, and just like that, the proposal meeting grinds to a dead stop. Once they pulled together solid proof, they finally got the go-ahead. Chris and Tackle would train in swordsmanship with Weiss, but only if he gave the okay first. Meanwhile, Tackle sits there replaying everything that just happened. Only this time he gets it. His brother's shocking help saved him. But then his thoughts snap to something darker. What the heck was behind Dalek's wild growth at the end? Turns out, later on, after he'd finally found his footing, Dalek told Takil the truth. He'd been fighting tooth and nail not to get pushed out. All because his little brother was so ridiculously talented. Suddenly, Dalek hits on the truth, so all that weird behavior back then was exactly because of it. Chris rushes to apologize to his brother, telling him he's messed up again, only for Dalek to wave it off and say it's all okay. At the temporary mercenary training grounds on the edge of Sis City, Weiss finishes the day's training and finally shuts it down. Dalek fires back a sharp thank you for the instruction, and the text pops up to reveal his name, Solis von Dalek, just 11 years old. 3 months have nearly slammed shut since those brothers started training under Weiss. As the session wraps up, Klasia beams and thanks Weiss warmly. But Chris looks totally wiped out. Like he can barely breathe, so when someone points out he's being too slack, he's left staring at his brother's insane energy, wondering how it's even possible. The narrator snaps it into place. Solis von Tegel, just 8 years old. Then Chris fires off a question to Dalek. Has he already climbed up to the rank of master? Dalek answers that Weiss's training is brutally strict, straight up like a demon teacher. But Chris learns Dalek has taken it all in with real focus, and now he's starting to blossom with true talent. He lays out his brutal training plan: 3 sword sessions a week at the makeshift drill grounds, then 2 more rounds in the courtyard of Baron Solis's manor. Their father stared in shock at how huge Dalek had become, because at his size, even regular soldiers would crumble in seconds, especially since Dalek had already clawed past the swordsman rank and torn his way up to warrior status. Chris beams and tells his brother it's all thanks to his amazing teacher. Meanwhile, tackles his own reflection and realizes this kid isn't even out of trainee status yet. At level 2, he should have been bragging about his sword skills like some proud little legend. But the truth is, even for 8-year-olds, his form is straight up hopeless, and he's just slumped there, crushed, believing he should study under the very same legendary teacher his brother had. In the middle of the flowers, he stood there, shoulders sinking, eyes dropping like the whole world had just crushed him. Sword training is clicking perfectly and the Pioneer group is locking into place just like we planned. Tackle lays out the plan. Even if the settlement begins as a tiny speck, he wants it to grow into a fully functioning town. First comes the heart of it: inns and shops, set up to shelter and support the hunters who keep marching into the demon lands and returning out. At the same time, investigators are already heading to the Taigun frontier too, including refugees who've been put to work to make it happen. Tackle can't stop smiling consulting. With Raymond first was the smartest move he ever made, because ever since, everything has run this smoothly thanks to Raymond, who's been steering the whole operation. The mercenary crews are already streaming into the settlement, teaming up with the vanguard to prep the town and start building. Then, in 6 months, they'll roll in the construction corps. And the very next year, they're ready to launch full-scale colonization. Weiss has been handed duties in the frontier settlement, mostly pushed through his lieutenant, and as he keeps hauling between Est and the frontier, he's also training the brothers. After that back and forth, both sides apparently nodded and agreed to renew the deal every year so long as both parties say yes. First, Baron Soli's family and the Mercenary Corps sign for 2 years. Then it can be extended 1 year at a time from there. Meanwhile, someone yells, "Tackle," and he shoots back an immediate reply. The voice tells him he's finally rested up and pushes for a quick spar, and Tackle wastes no time. He agrees immediately. During a break in training, someone leans in and warns Tackle, "At this pace, you'll be trapped here forever." Tackle just smirks and says, "I'm not worried. I'm getting brushed off no matter what." But Weiss steps in and tells him to take one more short break, then adds, like it's already decided, that he's got this. Taki's trap snaps shut like clockwork, and the second that vise closes, Taki can finally breathe easy. Now, he can finally lock in and hunt down countermeasures for the last 5 great calamities still looming from the first term. Meanwhile, Anne hurries up to Tackle and blurts out that the workshop just sent a package. Tackle tells Anne to grab it and haul it to his room, and Anne snaps back that she's got it. The package finally tore open the Wait Carl's workshop, the long-awaited item landing right here in the town of S. Tackle reckons this is finally it. He's about to fire the 5th arrow at last. Tackle tells you the way he's gonna smash this next challenge. He's been building his plan since he was 5 years old. Next year, during the border battle, right when the protagonist hits 9, Baron Solis's army gets smashed, taking brutal losses that gut their power, and this becomes the 4th stop in the 5 great disasters from the old era. The panel snaps into view, and there it is, one perfectly finished bow, plus a quiver packed tight with arrows. But this isn't some run-of-the-mill bow. Tackle built a bow that hits 3 demands at once. It lashes enemies from long range beyond their reach. It punches through the Empire's iron cavalry armor, and any soldier can use it without needing fancy, advanced skill. He kicked things off by upgrading the bow materials in this world alongside Carl, the workshop's top craftsman. Then he dove right into the next step. He fused different types of wood into a deadly composite bow, then ramped up its range and power by bolting on metal and monster-made materials, refining it into a true synthetic weapon. Someone tells Gerudo-san, "You're incredible, just like always." But the craftsman cuts in and warns Tackle that this isn't for ordinary hands. The truth? That bow demands brutal strength to even draw, so no way can every soldier actually use it. That's when Tackle slips in his bargain bin wisdom from the modern world. Inspired by an American compound bow from the 20th century, he bolts 4 pulleys together to slash the strain and crank that starting velocity sky high. So yeah, this guy basically engineered a hybrid crossbow that borrows the best bite from both a composite bow and a compound bow, and when he straps it to a solid base, you can aim it way faster and hit way more accurately. 3 years have passed since Tackle first hauled himself into that workshop, and damn, what a brutal, winding road it's been. Once the workshop got buried under water wheel orders, he hauled prototype models home and dove into research, while Tackle, remembering what Nishida spotted on a video site, stayed alone and kept hammering away, testing every string position and attachment, swapping pulley sizes and combinations until the whole setup finally made sense. The image flashes his family huddled together, and Tackle's thoughts burn. He's determined to defend them and keep their land safe. With Carl tightening every last detail, Tackle emptied every gold coin his father had handed him the other day, then poured it all into finishing the project. And if those feelings hadn't been pushing him onward, he would have thrown in the towel ages ago. Then at last, the finished prototype thundered out of the workshop, fully built and ready to go. The completed crossbow gets a full spotlight, showing every crank and gear as it sits in its mounted frame. And Tackle stands there gripping the finished weapon, finally ready to test what he's poured years of work into. Now, Tackle forced them to craft 2 crossbow styles, one top-tier built with a crushing composite bow and a pulley setup. They cut costs by crafting a cheaper bow with a composite build, no pulleys anywhere. But after digging into it, I found out this world even has crossbows, yet they fire too fast for how they're meant to be used, or they just don't line up with the purpose, so people hardly ever pick them as weapons. History has already slammed the truth about crossbows, showing exactly what they can crush and where they fall apart. In the European 100 Years' War, the longbow absolutely crushed the crossbow, while across the world in Japan, people already had classic bows and firearms, so the crossbow never really caught on and faded into history. In the kingdom of Kyle, bows aren't just good to have, they demand serious skill and non-stop training. And for Baron Solis's army, where tons of part-time soldiers are constantly switching between drills and real fights, that kind of weapon just doesn't fit. With a crossbow, you just lock it in place, draw the string back, and then pull the trigger. That's the whole deal. During the whole development grind, Tackle kept every secret lock tight, thanks to Raymond. Raymond tells him, "Leave it to me," and suddenly everything's sealed away tight as a vault. At last, every last preparation for the 5th arrow is locked in and ready to fly. 2 days later, At the Mercenary Corps temporary training ground, someone walks up and hits Tackle with a bright, cheerful, "Good morning." Weiss flashes a greeting as Tackle bursts in, lugging a load of luggage for the young master. One of the guys brings up the luggage, and Anne fires back. "If it was luggage, I'd have carried it for you." Then Weiss asks for Tackle's opinion, and Tackle smirks, saying he's got something he wants them to see today. Weiss studies the crossbow up close, turning it over in his hands as someone quizzes him about how it works. Weiss points out the weird-looking crossbow, and Tassel nods, telling her he stitched ideas from different books into a model, then had a craftsman refine it, and Weiss can't help giving the weapon a doubtful stare. Tackle clocks that look and goes, "Yeah, Weiss knows crossbows too, even if almost nobody in Kyle's kingdom even talks about them. Because of course she does, just like the vice captain she is." Tackle leans in and asks if Weiss will fire it for him, because he wants to hear what Weiss thinks about the weapon before he makes a single move. Weiss snatches the crossbow and gets it ready for a real test. Across the training grounds, a target waits out in the distance, and he snaps into position, raising his weapon and getting ready to strike. Then Weiss yanks her crossbow and fires one brutal bolt rockets forward with terrifying force, drilling straight toward the target. Tackle and the rest lean in, eyes locked, tracking every inch of the shot like their lives depend on it. Suddenly, the bolt slams into the target with a brutal thud, and everyone watching jerks in shock, clearly blown away by the power they just witnessed. Weiss pauses for half a heartbeat, then reloads her crossbow with razor-sharp precision, moving fast but controlled as she makes sure every mechanism is ready to fire. He looks up with pure excitement. If the Tackles pull another one of these, Weiss is all in, and you already know the Mercenary Corps will be clamoring to get these weapons too. But Tackle shoots off an apology, saying, "Trust me, this is everything we've managed so far," and admits he wanted to get Weiss's impressions first before he even dared to pitch his plan to his father. Weiss admits the weapon's power. His jaw drops in pure shock. He tells Tackle to go tell his father he wants to buy one himself, even the armor of the Iron Cavalry. The pride of the Graphonia Empire can be pierced, and then right from the background, someone yells Tackle's name. Clasia snaps that it's not fair and demands her own shot, while Chris panics and begs for his turn too. Dalek finally gets the green light reluctantly. Sure, but the sibling snatches the chance with excitement, grabs the crossbow, and then Dalek just keeps firing shot after shot, never bored, drilling the weapon again and again. Dalek keeps firing and yelling that he just needs a bit more practice. Then someone finally tells him, "Go ahead," and the range goes on until Anne blurts out the one thing that shuts it down. The next day arrives, and in the soulless barren household courtyard, Tackle gathers his father, mother, and Raymond like it's go time. Then he thanks them for carving out the time for him. Then Tackle steps up and addresses Dalek with full respect, crossbow in hand, as he gets ready to put on a demonstration. Episode 8 kicks off in Baron Soli's manor courtyard, and there's Tackle standing primed and gripping his crossbow, ready to strike. He formally addressed his brother, Dalek, as he readied himself to unleash what the weapon could truly do. Tackle fires the crossbow right as the flames flare up. Then the bolt rockets forward, smashing into its target with an insane, earth-shaking impact. That blast hits like a cannon going off. Dalek and the others jerk in total shock, stunned by how wildly powerful this weapon is. Tackle smashes right dead center, and the rest just freeze wide-eyed, completely stunned by the shock they've witnessed. Meanwhile, Dalek's eyes lock onto that weird weapon, his mind racing to decode its wild shape and crushing power, wondering if the same secret knowledge is hiding inside Tackle's books. Tackle shrugs and admits the pieces were ripped straight from books. Then he tested them himself to see if they'd truly work for a bow. After his test shot yesterday, he even pings Weiss, the vice captain, for feedback. And the mercenary's verdict lands hard. It could drop the Iron Cavalry of the Graphonia Empire. But then, out of nowhere, someone calls out to Kula as a fool, and the dark-haired figure snaps at him, saying he should have reported that important matter to his father first. Takula sinks in defeat and admits he got scolded. Raymond told him, "Yeah, I get it, this makes sense." Then Tackle leans in and says this crossbow will let even the weak green soldiers from their domain shoot with solid results. Suddenly, a voice shouts, "Lord Takir." Baron Solis leans in and shoots. "So, what do you think about this crossbow?" Then he snaps back that, unlike bows, crossbows hit slower, so that sluggish rate of fire is exactly why they're not worth much in the end. With a war roaring closer every day, they have exactly 1 year to plan their next move. So Tackle and a mystery partner step up with a proposal, and at the strategy meeting, Weiss, Tackle, and Clesia are the ones who make it happen. Tackle pushes for instant mass production of the fresh crossbow he just built and orders the whole army to deploy it right away. Because right now, the Empire's iron cavalry is the biggest threat bearing down on them. Right now, they've got zero way to stop their group charges, and their position is getting bulldozed as the enemy overruns them. Tackle tells them the archer's arrows won't slice through the cavalry's armor, then points out this new weapon can actually punch through even iron, and says he'll fire it himself. Right now, their fighting force is just under 400 soldiers, but if they can arm every last one with a crossbow, the whole war could flip on its head. For now, they'll guard that mechanism like a crown jewel, keeping every detail locked down so they can stay on top. And Weiss can't help but think. Tackle nods like this is exactly what they need, then says they won't just crank out the new weapon, they'll widen who's capable of using it too, and asks Weiss what she thinks would happen if only 1/10 of their subjects could wield it. Turns out the 6th arrow holds way more power than people think. Tackle's not selling you a dream here, because they're about to recruit nearly 800 fresh archers. They kick things off by plotting a brand new shooting range and arming everyone with standard crossbows. The townspeople get to blow off steam with target shooting for fun, and Tackle lines up the prizes and handles every last detail. Then the range opens its gates for the soldiers' training and stays free for the townspeople whenever they want. Meanwhile, someone corners Weiss and Claudia and asks, "Don't you think Takir's proposal is awesome?" Because the villagers will sharpen their skills just to chase those rewards. Then Tackle grins and tells them, just mess around, your skill will rise on its own, and boom, they end up snagging top-tier archers without lifting a finger. But Weiss can't shake the feeling, will those villagers really buy into this? Claudia shoots the proposal a bright smile like it doesn't even scare her. Claudia bursts in and says, "I tried it for the first time yesterday too, and it was insanely fun." Then she leans closer like, "And once you guys hear Tackle's next proposal, I swear all your worries are gonna vanish." Someone nods along to her verdict, and Tackle strides in and unleashes the 6th arrow in his master plan. He's standing there, flaunting his presentation board for stage 1, and then they start tallying points for each target. Boom. The highest scorers get prizes, and that prize system lights a fire under everyone to join in. Tackle fires off the plan. Stage 2 means monthly regular tourneys plus a massive annual championship so everyone can prove their skills, and Stage 3 brings prize money for the top winners of every event to keep the players hungry. While that's going on, the stand-in swears she can't afford to slip as Lord Tackle's guard, and Deluc proudly declares he's going after the annual championship. Alright, for the 4th stage, they're running a betting system on the yearly tournament. Champ guess right, and you get paid, and they rake in a cut from every wager to cover the prize and reward costs like the house. Meanwhile, the stand-ins are betting while Kreese throws his pick out, and Darren grumbles because his prediction tanked. Tackle leans in and fires off his question to his father, because if the tournaments get his approval, they'll explode into life, drawing more fighters to both events, spurring the betting and turning everything into a full-on festival where the whole town can jump in. Tackle tells them that this tournament won't just be a spectacle. It'll grow into a Solis family signature, turning their own citizens into a battle-ready force by mixing entertainment with profit. Baron Solis flashes a grin and declares that it's a brilliant idea. Raymond watches the meeting and realizes the merchant baron's blood is boiling. Other domains will smell it the moment it turns into a specialty, and then they'll slam down the minimum entry fee. Meanwhile, Tackle shoots back a note to answer Raymond's question. He argues it all comes down to what you're using, because that crossbow just can't match a bow's rate of fire. Then Tackle brings up Oda Nobunaga's 3-stage gun volley at Nagashino Shore. The bursts get smaller each round, but the arrow rain is still massively more relentless than anything those normal archers have been pulling off until now. Take a system where they swap weapons every 2 shots. Boom, it's twice as fast, and if they cycle 3 shifts, that firing rate gets multiplied again, with soldiers rotating back in right after they fired. So if it's really like this, they can actually slam the brakes on the Iron Cavalry's charge, and you watch someone realize it in real time. He keeps bragging that his sword work is flawless. Yet with a bow, he's totally useless until someone steps in and says, "Nope. Even a regular guy can train for just 1 day and then shoot with enough force to punch through a target from that distance." Someone blurts out, "Wouldn't it be wild if every soldier in the Baron's army could shoot like that?" Then Takhill blurts out that, of course, Ice still has no idea about this. Raymond gives him a knowing nod, like he totally gets it. Both of them traded a sharp, knowing glance, then agreed to keep this development locked down and secret from Clegia for now. Meanwhile, Baron Solis tells Raymond, "I got you here," and Raymond nods like he's in total agreement. The girl's face tightens as the expenses sink in, but before she can even spiral, a text box pops up out of nowhere telling them to pretend they never heard it. Baron Solis snaps out Raymond's name, and Raymond jerks his head like, "Yo, what's going on?" Takhill blurts that this is a brand new crossbow, then storms to demand mass production from the workshop right now, ordering absolute secrecy before it even hits the streets while pushing for instant delivery to every soldier and training them on how to use it. And Baron Solis nods along. Then he adds, "Keep building it on the shooting range too, so the whole population can level up their fighting power with crossbows, no pulleys needed." In those split panels, Baron Solis leans in and orders Clegia to be deadly careful. Nothing slips, not even a single secret. And when it comes to figuring out how each weapon gets used on the battlefield, he's handing that research straight over to Dalek. Takhill drops another bombshell. He'll hand Clegia the reins for recruiting staff for the reception office and even running tournament logistics. Then he orders someone to lock down the shooting range setup and the voting system and submit everything, and they immediately agree. Baron Solis slams his hand down and declares the government budget will foot every one of these expenses. Then he shuts it down. Like that's the end of the discussion. In a chibi-style illustration, the two siblings beam side by side, shouting that they pulled it off together. Takhill moves on and jumps in with a bold little proposal he brings up that Weiss said he wants a new model crossbow, and Baron Solis leans in like he's hooked. Then Takhill lays out his plan, step by step. They could knock down part of the contract fee by handing crossbows to mercenary crews, and if they kept tight control, guarded every secret, and made sure the weapons got battle-tested against monsters in the field, they'd demand reports showing every improvement. He keeps going. Raymond nods and says the plan is brilliant. If everyone signs on, they'll ship the early mass-produced models straight to the mercenary corps. Then later plug the people who already know how to use them in as instructors for the army. Meanwhile, one sibling taunts the other, bragging that they've gotten so crafty they even pulled the master into using them to the fullest, only for the other to snap back that they've been pitch black from the very beginning. Then Takhill turns to his father and asks if they should run a test firing too. And Baron Solis gives the go-ahead and right in the middle of it. Clea can't help wondering if she gets to do it too. Kleiser says, "If we start moving right now, we'll make it in time for next year's war. Because up until now, they've been smashed to pieces by brutal cavalry charges." She says this is how they'll boost the number of soldiers they can unleash. And if they can turn the commoners into a real fighting force, they can leave the home front in their hands with zero worries. As everyone cheers, praise lands on Baron Solis like it was inevitable then. A text box hits you with the ugly truth. Arming regular folks has always been a nightmare. March them to war with no solid garrison left behind, and the defenses collapse fast. And while they're gone, bandits stalk the frontiers and monsters could smash in anytime. So safe is the last thing anyone can call this. Meanwhile, at the test firing range, somebody shouts that they hit the target and they immediately holler to Raymond, saying he nailed it too. Another voice jumps in, calling out, "Your turn next." Then a guy yells to bump the angle up just a little, and everyone nods along. And right when the shots keep landing, someone can't help but gasp. This is something else. Takhill realizes this is the moment anyone who talks later can be shut down with this as proof. And he adds that, from the looks of it, the entertainment side of things is going to be just fine. The narration paints a future just around the corner right when the Solis archers pull this off. It becomes the first shot fired toward a name that will roar across the battlefield. From this moment on, they're calling it the Esther Bow, and they're about to unleash this brand new weapon in their world. Later on, at the East Town workshop, craftsmen are hammering away when one guy yells that a part's crooked, then another voice cuts in. "Don't worry, we'll take care of the extra materials for you." Then a mysterious figure storms up to the workshop entrance and greets them like they've been expected. Tackle, Anne, and their third companion finally step into Geld's workshop and Tackle's jaw drops. The place is way bigger, and there are way more workers inside now. Geld beams at them, shouting, "Young master," and warmly thanking them for braving the long trip then. Right inside the workshop, as soon as the workers spot them, everything snaps to attention. Someone blurts out, "The young master is here!" Climbing the stairs, Tackle tells Geld, "Don't worry, we're the ones barging in unannounced." But Geld just waves it off. Tackle tells them, "We're here to check the production status of the Ester bow. Straight up guess that's what brought us today." Geld snaps his attention up at the idea, eyes blazing as he can't wait to weigh in on this new development item. Tackle tries to get Geld to focus on his work first, but Geld blurts out bright-eyed about the water wheel project. And then everything they're building and every last bit of progress comes straight from the young master's ideas, so he gives Tackle full credit for handing them all this work. He finally gets to work, then someone drops a bombshell and even shouts out Gerudo's name. Tackle and Anne swap sweet, comforting smiles as they soak in Geld's grateful bow. They rush into the workshop's private room and Tack, "You'll be coming in soon. People said it wasn't long ago that it was just one lonely room, but now he can finally talk in peace, and he's genuinely grateful for the upgrade." Then Geld fires off the question, "What kind of product is Tackle cooking up?" Carl slips in with them, and Tackle starts spilling the story. Tackle hands over blueprints for a brand new weapon, and Geld can't help but lean in, studying the plans with sharp curiosity. Tackle tells Geld it's a rapid-fire crossbow, like a machine gun in disguise. But then he cuts the hype and says there's no need to rush this project. First, focus on the regular crossbow and the Estel bow, and Geld nods like, "Got it." Then Tackle breaks it down. Several arrows get shoved into a magazine. And when you yank the lever, the mechanism slams back and forth to shove the arrows in. While it tightens the string, the moment that lever reaches the end, it unleashes the shot on its own. Turns out this design is for the Juga crossbow, the legendary weapon said to be created by the genius tactician Juga Kongming himself, and historians still argue whether it truly existed or if it was invented later. The weapon first burst into the romance of the Three Kingdoms, and in his old life, Nishida couldn't get enough, buzzing over movies and videos about it while Tackle figures it out. It's not exactly a machine gun. This weapon fires far faster than a regular baoso. Why not study it and learn its power? His excitement skyrockets at the thought of finally getting his hands on one in this world. Then he points out the metal fitting that hooks the string, and Geld grills him for the exact shape details. Back at the workshop table, Geld snaps at Tackle and warns that letting the shaft wobble when it fires is pure stupidity. Tackle fires back, saying they should double layer and curve the piece instead, and Geld immediately barks for everyone to grab the tools and the arrows. But right then, Tackle slams on the brakes, yells at him to stop, because the weapons they ordered have to come first. The repeating crossbow can wait, and they need to keep the whole operation brutally secret. Carl grins with total confidence and tells Tackle, "Leave it to me." Geld practically bounces up, hand raised, ready to back him while Tackle stands back, watching in silence from behind. Then Tackle and his brother hit the Esterol bow production site together, scouting it top to bottom, swapping in metal pieces ordered from blacksmiths, and breaking the wooden parts out across different craftsmen so they stay tough and crank out bows at mass production speed. Tackle's convinced they've got to brace themselves for the war looming at the border next year. And good news, it looks like they'll pull it off with the bare minimum number of Esterol bows they need. After the presentation, Weiss tracked down Tackle's father and laid out his request, so the mercenary crew got every piece of equipment they needed. Later on, the first batch of Estuarol bows is finally finished and shipped, and on that same day, Tackle can at last head home with a huge wave of relief. And wait, there's even more happening. On Tackle's father's orders, they're also digging into the triple volley technique, and the deadline is literally set for next autumn. Next year's war won't be some massive world-ending mess, it'll hit local ground, pushed forward by the frontier lords. Still, Baron Solis's army is looking at a brutal 40% casualty loss. But here's the shocker. In the past, in the mercenary corps, they're not just testing the Ester bow and logging every bit of feedback, they're also out there training with. And right now, Tackle's got 3 brutal advantages, starting with the mercenary crew twin-headed hawk. led by Vice, the ever-victorious general fresh off their last 3 wins, then landing Esther Bows in the fight, who can slice clean through even the enemy's elite iron cavalry. And third, straight out of the Baranial Chronicles, Tackle already has the full blueprint. He knows, to the last detail, exactly how Kyle's kingdom will shatter. Tackles his thoughts every single day, spiraling non-stop until one day, everything finally tips. Baron Solis tells him that since he can't fully trust Viscount Gorman's army as allies, he needs one more move something to cut down the uncertainty for good. Tackle starts to wonder, what's the point of worrying anymore? Because at this stage, it might all be pointless. Outside, Dalek corners his brother and demands what's wrong. Tackle blurts out the truth about his magic. Dalek nods like he already knows. Because that's light magic, and that kind of power is insanely rare even in the kingdom of Kyle. Tackle agrees. But you can tell something's weighing on him. Then panic hits him, and he begs Dalek to just let him blow off some steam for a minute. Dalek blurts, "Is it really true?" Tackle snaps back, "If it wasn't true, you wouldn't be drowning in that depression." But then Dalek lights up with excitement and blurts that it might work. Tacky freezes for a second, though, because they think they should ask their father first, or he'll chew them out again. Then Tackle smirks with total confidence and says, "Relax, this is just a trap for newbies, but if they use it right, they can take down the Empire's iron cavalry." Meanwhile, in the autumn of Kyle 502, an express rider comes blazing into Est. The moment for the sortie is seconds from being revealed. The history of the Baron Solis domain, Omens of Ruin, lays it out. Kyle's era, year 502. Margrave Goth of the Graphonia Empire storms into the kingdom of Kyle, and Marquis Hasteberg rushes the noble armies to slam them at the border. But Viscount Hieronymus' troops snap and crumble, and suddenly the right flank is on the verge of collapsing. Alone, Baron Solis' men take the hit, losing 40% of their forces and fight like their lives depend on it, trying to stop the entire line from breaking. Even with the Imperial army mowing down soldier after soldier and still riding high on morale, their invasion crashes and burns and the kingdom's troops bleed just as much, yet they somehow slam the doors shut and force them back. While all that chaos rages, the people of Esther are left wailing over every single loss. Then, right at the tail end of a blistering summer, a messenger on a thunder-fast horse comes tearing from the Marquis of Hasteberg and rides into S. As he delivers the news to Tackle, you can feel it. Graphonia Empire is gearing up for round 2 of invasion. Hasteberg's command barks at them to slam their troops towards Southern Gate Fortress at breakneck speed. Then, he tore into the enemy along the Southern Gate Plains, straight on the border south of the fortress, and wiped them out. Finally, the moment they've been dreading and dreaming about has arrived at last. Baron Solis storms together 1516 standing soldiers and 335 part-time troops from all over the domain. 550 men total. Then, he leaves a garrison behind and charges 400 straight into battle, with the double-headed Hawk mercenary band throwing in 40 more, while Solis's own forces bring the remaining 360. Even though it doesn't hit the 600 men a higher-ranked Viscount demands, this still comes out to a staggering more than double the 200 a normal Baron fields, and it's enough to keep his honor standing tall. The map lays out their path from Estel Domain through Hieronymus V County, straight to the Southern Gate Fortress by the Margraviate of Hasteberg and the Demon Frontier, and once that route's locked in, they hit the road for the Southern Gate Plains. Meanwhile, Tackle watched the army march out of Est with his remaining family members, eyes locked on their retreat. In the streets of Est, the wind whipped through her long blonde hair as she pushed forward. Right now, Tackle sinks into a breather from his self-training, staring at the clock like, where are my dad and the others? Because they should have hit the battlefield about now. Solis von Tackle was totally ready to throw himself into war then the moment he volunteered. They shut him down and rejected him on the spot. Solis von Tackle, age 9. Klasia snapped at him that the battlefield isn't a child's game, and someone else cut in with a grim warning. It's far harsher than he's imagining, but this time, the Solis Baron's army has a weapon in their hands, something the old history never even hinted at, and Tackle can't shake it from his mind if history plays out like it always does. The Solis Baron's army is going to get its strength cut by 40% in this war, and he knows exactly how brutal this fight will be, because he's wished for it with his whole soul. Tackle leans back and reviews his prep. He already talked through every concern and mapped strategies for taking on the Iron Cavalry with Vice, using his elite troops, because even if there's a disadvantage, he's determined to turn it into a way through. Vice, the tactical genius dubbed the ever-victorious general, walks in and the odds instantly flip. The Ester Bow is a long-range weapon that can punch through Iron Cavalry armor, far beyond what past campaigns ever managed. And the cavalry's power? It spikes dramatically. Baron Solis just scrapped the whole elite archer squad idea. Now every fighter in his army, cavalry included, slings an Ester Bow, because crossbows don't need much training and even part-timers can unleash the full power of ranged combat. 2 years ago, when grain prices exploded, Tackle's father saw it coming and quietly stocked up early. He even planned for the cavalry to swell. Baron Solis's father was ruthless about details. Every move came with a believable reason, so nobody could sniff out a thing. With the settlement stuck where it was, they had to ready horses ahead of a total evacuation, hauling all the citizens out. And with the settlement packed tight, those horses were the lifeline for the heavy traffic, real, essential infrastructure. While the famine crushed everyone else, Tackle's father seized the chaos, snatching up a huge horde of warhorses as people elsewhere slaughtered theirs for food or traded them for grain. And Baron Solis kept his sights locked on the same prize, buying warhorses one deal at a time. So the double-headed hawk mercenaries got their payment in warhorses, and suddenly every last one of them was riding into battle as a full cavalryman, turning a squad that once had under 100 riders into a force that now blasts past 200 with the whole crew counted in. Meanwhile in Est, Clage hones her sword swings, knowing exactly what's at stake, but it still grates on her nerves. Nearby, Tackle slumps against a pillar, waiting. As a kid, this is all he ever gets to do now, stand here and wait for the good news to hit. Because he's already done everything he possibly could, Tackle clenches his jaw and prays in silence, begging the fourth calamity to spare him, swearing his family and soldiers must come out safe. Anne stands tall with grit in her eyes, gazing upward as she murmurs the one hope that they can beat it, and then the camera swings to the sky. Clee stands below, watching birds wheel overhead while the wind whips her hair as she stares straight toward the distant battlefield. The story cuts to the southern Gay Plains border, where endless fields sprawl out and you can spot the Kyle Kingdom army's formations and camps across the land. Then there Lord Darren stands in his armor, staring down the battlefield from on high at the far right wing, the Soles Cornell Baronial Allied forces. Right out of nowhere, a hooded figure creeps up behind Dalek and praises him for the job. Then Dalek snaps back that Earth's mage has finished building the fortifications, digging the trenches, and setting the traps. They even borrowed that mage from Baron Cornell, and it's all done. Then the two stride over the plains side by side. Dalek spilling that he's heard this invasion is just the fallout from the Imperial succession brawl. The cloaked figure, probably Weiss, he confirms it's correct. But the moment he does, he makes it brutally clear. This mess is still a total nightmare for them. Dalek breaks it down. The First Prince's faction made a reckless play, and it still produced 0 real results, so the First Prince stayed out of it, and only the Marquis of Gort showed up. Dalek leans in and fires off. So Weiss, what do you think of our formation? Weiss takes the question to heart and Tackle nods as a report lands. Enemy forces are roughly matched to theirs, about 7,000 strong. The speaker warns that the enemy's lining up in a fish-scale formation to smash forward, and their side fires back by planning to wrap them up and cut them off with a crane wing formation. A tactical diagram flashes the Griffonian Empire's 12,000 troops lined up at the top in a razor-edged, offensive fish-scale formation. The blonde commander nods, says the basic policy is solid, but it's a gamble, then leans in and demands, so what does that mean? The blonde commander points out that Marquis Hasteberg is right where they expected, planted in the center, but the enemy might not be going straight for his main camp, and the image flashes, the mounted Marquis riding beneath his own banner. The recap keeps rolling. Those giant wings won't sync up, period. Every commander plants themselves on a hill for the best defense, but that choice rips their troops wide apart, stretching both wings farther than you'd ever want. Tackle just zeroed in on the enemy's playbook. Break them apart. Then hit one of the wings to finish the job. Two tactical diagrams scream the threat. Once the enemy smashes one of their wings, they'll blast straight at the main camp, hitting it from the flanks straight through the center. They might smash right through, slice off the allied retreat, and then close in to surround every last one. He grinds to a stop, lost in thought, then the explanation fires right back up. With their army stretched into this giant ring, there's no punch in the front. It's easy to shove through, and they can't sync up with their allies, so soldiers get cut off, left stranded and missing the fight. And in a battle with no real advantage in troop numbers, that mistake turns deadly. The images lay out Viscount Gorman's army in full force, ready to make war look inevitable. And Viscount Hirami's army right-wing stuff gets messy fast, and the situation turns complicated in a hurry. Both commanders lock eyes with worried faces, and the other commander snaps that, with distrust between them running wild, the turnips were suddenly brought up right after the refugee disaster. Then Tackle grimly admits, they've had us in their sights from the very beginning. The blonde commander nods along, and you can see the frustration hit because even with their own allies right there, this alliance still has to keep one eye out for trouble. Meanwhile, a tactical diagram flashes the right-wing formation, and here's the nightmare. If the enemy goes all in on the right wing, the Solis Cornell Alliance squad shoved all the way on the far right will get cut off, surrounded, and wiped out. Tackle warns that if those two Viscounts even try to knock out their old grudges mid-battle, disaster hits fast while the blonde commander shoots back that if either army so much as stumbles back under enemy pressure, the entire formation is one wrong step from collapsing. The blonde commander nods hard and says their enemies are probably thinking the exact same thing, then admits it's a risk so brutal it might as well be suicide. Then the video slams into a dramatic shot of the Griffonian heavy cavalry towering armored fighters in horned helmets, flying the Coat Iron Cavalry Corps banner. The narrator hypes them as the enemy's real muscle, and you can practically hear the confidence dripping off every word, but the truth is brutal. If the Allied forces tried to crash that charge head-on, they wouldn't even survive a few minutes. But the blonde commander suddenly stops and, with a sly little smirk, blurts out, with a slight smile, just know this only works if they charge straight into it. Someone points at this moment and says, this is the opening we need, because the next turning point could totally flip how this war ends. The story cuts to three commanders huddled atop higher ground, staring down at the colossal battlefield below, while the narration keeps pushing the point Baron Cornell's troops are right there with them, and this man is a total fortress mastermind. Baron Cornell spots himself getting singled out from the crowd standing there. The briefing spells everything out. Every one of the 400 soldiers gets an Esterbow, and they even roll out 200 fresh cavalry units, brand new and ready to strike. Tackle stands among the commanders as these weapons of war get unveiled, piece by piece. That tactical briefing just won't quit. Then someone drops a bomb. There's one more thing to consider. And right after, they grin and reveal the final secret tactic hidden in their sleeve. The rundown says their allied left flank will be led by the fearless, famous Viscount Curious, and if he times the strike with theirs just right, they'll yank off a killer half-encirclement from the left. And here's the twist. Even their allies won't see it coming. With all that set up, they should be able to throw down a seriously strong fight. Just as the plans get picked apart in full detail, an armored figure lunges out from the shadows and Tackle flashes that cocky smirk, claiming he's about to flip the entire mood on its head. That dramatic line just hangs in the air for a beat, and Weiss is left totally baffled by the bold declaration, while the blonde commander can't stop a grin from spreading. Baron Soli says he heard Weiss got recommendations from his sons, and that putting the captain in as their strategist was the right move. Then he stops, squints, and admits Tackle in particular is so ferocious he can't help but wonder where that raw intensity even comes from. The Baron cuts off mid-sentence as the camera switches to someone we can only see from behind. Meanwhile, that blonde commander grins and straight up admits he planned it all from day one. Weiss shoots back, an honor? And the look on his face says he's genuinely shocked and impressed. The blonde commander clocked it. Enemy forces were about to start moving any second. As the battlefield sprawled out in front of them, a command blast suddenly tore through the air. Every troop got the order at once, and the narrator calmly admits this is the fight history would later brand as the Southern Gate Extermination Battle. A battle-hardened commander snaps his arm up, cape whipping through the air, and roars that combat is starting. So Y standing ready below as the narration basically screams the fight is officially on. Inside the Graphonia Empire Army headquarters, where the air practically crackled with orders, Margrave Goat surveys the battlefield with a smug grin, then declares those fools from the Kingdom of Kyle lined up exactly how he predicted. The Margrave spits with pure contempt, basically saying, they can't even figure out why the Empire would let us take the hill on purpose. Margrave Goat keeps digging deeper, pointing out that the Kyle forces are obsessed with one thing. They'll fight tooth and nail to hold the hills that give them defense, because in their minds, it's defense always defense. The Margrave calmly spins out the battle plan, then the center and right armies will buckle on purpose, while the left wing rips straight through the enemy's right flank. Imperial orders blast across the field, and the officer snaps orders to the Iron Cavalry Corps to hold back in the rear, waiting to burst into the front line and smash the enemy's right flank. Then the charge command booms across the battlefield, and the Graphonian forces slam into a perfectly coordinated assault. Meanwhile, on the Kingdom side, the commander barks razor-sharp orders. Snipers lock in their exact preset spots, line up by their numbers, and hold tight until the signal finally hits. The subordinate snaps back in acknowledgement, and the commander orders them to carry every word straight to the entire army, just like they planned. On the tactical map, you can spot Viscount Hieronymus' army, Viscount Gorman's army, and the allied forces Baron Solis and Baron Cornell. Then the commander points everything out, smash into the enemy's right wing with their main force and wipe them out, one by one. He kept the center and left wings close enough to pin them, while he made the right wing look totally scattered and out of control. Viscount Gorman's army crashes into the Imperial forces across the open field, and the battlefield turns into a non-stop, brutal brawl, as Viscount Hieronymus' army crashes into the fight on every front at once. A commander nods like he saw this coming, then slams out an order. The entire Baron army gears up for long-range bombardment. The whole tactical picture snaps into focus, and someone even mutters that it's playing out exactly as planned. Then the strategic analysis kicks in and lays everything bare. The enemy barrels into the right wing with 2,000 troops, a crushing force that smashes the combined power of Viscount Hieronymus and Viscount Gorman. On the battlefield, numbers are everything plus. The Viscount's armies are crumbling from low morale, and the grim prediction is already spreading. Once both lines shatter, the Empire will unleash the Iron Cavalry Corps to smash in the final blow. Then they hit the main camp's right flank hard, leaving it wide open. Up on the hilltop, the commanders stare down the battlefield. One says it's only a matter of time, and the other just answers yes. Side by side, the two warriors watch the fight play out exactly like they predicted. On the battlefield floor, Viscount Hieronymus' army is unraveling. Soldiers shout that they can't hold a single line any longer. The enemy's forces are way too damn many, so someone screams, panicking, "Is there no order to retreat?" The battle keeps roaring with brutal fury, and in the chaos, soldiers are getting dropped left and right. At Graphonia's Empire Army HQ, an officer stiffens as he realizes one side is already crumbling. Another officer clocks it right away. The enemy's acting stubborn and defiant, but they're outnumbered, with less than half their numbers, and they're not surviving this. Then the Imperial commander roars out orders to half-encircle them, trapping those stubborn bastards and crushing them to nothing. Meanwhile, Viscount Gorman spits curses at that wretched opportunist, calling him a pathetic fool as his army fights for its life under the Imperial assault's tight, coordinated strikes. Gorman's forces swear they can't last a second longer, because if this keeps up, they're about to get swallowed by 2,000 enemy troops. A blonde warrior fights tooth and nail in the blood-soaked chaos while the grim commander finally swallows the truth. This is how it ends. The Imperial banners surge forward, then, at a single shouted command, someone yells, "Fall back," and they pull it off without breaking formation. From the watchtower, reports start smashing in back-to-back. Viscount Hieronymus' troops are crumbling. The battlefield locks onto the Solis Cornell baronial allied force, and then Viscount Gorman's army slips into retreat right on cue. A subordinate snaps his head toward Weiss, like he's about to spill the next big secret. We're like, "So, is it finally time?" And Weiss just gives a quick, simple, "yeah." Then Tackle barks an order, "Give him the signal," and the signal device snaps to life, catching the light and flashing the exact message across the battlefield. And right here, everything changes, because a brand new history kicks off from this moment. And in this quick, heavy little symbol of hope, Anne and young Tackle stand by the windows like the world has finally gone quiet, showing the future he's willing to fight for. And then, the moment hits. Weiss slams the moment, says it's about time, and declares they're starting right now, while Takil realizes they're right on the edge of it, the exact thing they've all been waiting for. The commanders line up and stand ready, every last one of them locked in for the decisive moment. And Takil, Weiss, Dialek, Klesia, and Chris, all of them are keyed up and ready to sprint into action. Inside the Griffonia Empire Army headquarters, Marquise Gortz's officers lean in, convinced they're witnessing the enemy's full-on panic retreat. One officer jabs his finger and orders the others to stare at their pathetic panic, while another mouths off and praises the Marquis like, "It's all thanks to His Excellencies, his cunning in those elite troops. Everyone's already confident they've won." An officer leans in and says it's finally time they land the finishing blow on those fools. While the chaos rages on, a signal flag snaps up in the background. The Iron Cavalry barrels forward at full speed, smashing into the front lines. An Imperial commander on the ground roars commands to slam the enemy's right wing, swing around behind them, and drag the Margrave's head straight back to him. But while the chaos rages, Weiss stays ice calm and declares they're kicking things off with that tiny, isolated strike on the enemies all the way on the far right. The Imperial commander screams with total confidence, barking orders to his forces to smash every last one of them. Suddenly, the kingdom's forces snap to attention because the Iron Cavalry is barreling straight at them full charge. A soldier screams in panic that the Iron Cavalry is here. Another shouts that they're charging straight for them. The mobber reinforcements from the center, and the commander snaps back that they can't budge or the Margrave will get targeted. Young Tackle stares down the battlefield, and in the blink of an eye, he clocks how everything shifts in an instant. Someone shoots off a frantic question. Did Lord Darren give any instructions at all? The camera lingers on a profile that looks like Weiss just staring, thinking like it's weighing something in silence. 6 armored soldiers stand in a row, shoulders tight, faces tense and determined as they wait for the command that's about to drop. Tackle stands on the fortifications, shouting orders at the top of his lungs. "Check your arrows, get ready to fire." Then he drills it into everyone's heads, "Stay inside the walls. Don't step out until the signal hits." And with that, he points back to history, reminding them his father has held this same spot again and again. And now the soldiers huddle behind the wooden walls, every nerve on edge until the signal finally blasts in. Meanwhile, out in the distance, someone catches a flicker of movement and their mind races as they try to figure out what the hell it could be. A lone figure rockets across the battlefield and Takil instantly clocks who it is. He shouts at Lord Dalek. Tackle barks the order, aim for the enemy group's heads right on his signal. His heart slammed against his ribs as he stared at the Iron Cavalry tearing across the distant plains. Everybody around him is staring him down, holding their breath like something huge is about to happen. And even though tension tore through him, that moment turned strangely silent like the whole world held its breath. White stands next to Tackle and tells him, "Just calm down, do this with me. If we stick to it, we can win this battle." Tackle admits to himself that his fear is so strong it makes him clench his fist. Yet, when he looks at Weiss and feels the moment crushing down on him, his expression hardens into pure, unstoppable determination. Then Tackle snaps his bow into place, draws back the string, and declares he's made up his mind too. His eyes snapped wide with pure focus and iron will as he got ready to pull the trigger. Then Weiss screamed tactical orders, yelling at Tackle to aim to the right at 2 o'clock and fire right now. Tackle shoots back with a bold command, "Everyone, believe in me." And the two commanders lock in perfect sync as that long-awaited moment finally hits. Then Tackle releases his arrow. This moment hits huge as he locks onto the image of him and his brother standing side by side right here until the caption drops the truth. It's only a few months before the war even starts. Meanwhile, back at the Solace Barony Mansion courtyard, one of the Tackle siblings is grinding their magic. Then they shoot a question. Is their spell totally useless? Like, they insist light magic isn't meant to hit, more like a distraction, a total diversion at best. and there's another sibling who lives by the blade, so they can't help but snap. Why am I stuck with some petty trick when it should have been fire or lightning? The magic user straight up admits it's nothing but a blast of light, and even if it lands on someone full on, it still won't hurt a single thing. Then a third person steps in and blurts out, "I get exactly how you feel." Like they felt the magic in their own bones. Someone leans in and dares the magic user to try their spell right here, right now. The youngest sibling yells at their big brother to wait up. The magic user cracks that they're only going to make the light fly, and the sword user suddenly gets it. This light can actually soar and zip around. The magic user snapped a glowing orb of light into existence in their hands, then proved they could make it hover and drift through the air. An observer clings to a high perch, watching everything from above. As the long-haired girl watches, frozen in place, the young magic user sprints alongside the light. One guy is blown away by it, while the magic user shrugs and insists it's nothing, just glows. The sibling can't stop praising their brother's magic as pure awesomeness, but the mage just looks totally lost at all the hype. Then Tackle grabs them and hauls them along so they can report to their father first. And shockingly, Baron Solis doesn't even flinch at the news. No nasty reactions, nothing. A few days later, right in the middle of their usual training, the magic user goes straight to their master to ask about the light magic, and their master nods and admits they've heard exactly what they were told. The very next day, out on the training grounds at the edge of East City, the drills pick right back up. The sibling grabs their brother and demands he show the master 2 brutal tackles. I'm getting genuinely amped about this magic right now. No matter how hard the magic user begs their master for help, all that glowing does is shine, and nothing changes. This frustrated magic user swears it's just dazzling, but deep down they're begging to get home already. Then someone blurts, "Okay, but what happens if you shine that light right in front of a horse that's charging full speed?" Tackle's eyes sharpen the moment he gets it. This power could change everything on the battlefield. And he fires off the question to the light magic user, who hesitates for a beat before realizing what it could unleash. A galloping horse that suddenly loses its sight would suffer unimaginable consequences. And after the magic user weighs it all, they confirm it with absolute certainty. Someone backs up Tackle's take, and Tackle fires back that Lord Dalek's light magic is going to be a tactical monster on the battlefield. The meaning hits, and Dalek finally clicks into what Tackle was trying to warn him about then. After that talk, he drills his aim until his shots of light travel farther and hit dead on. Here's the real truth about this plan. Plan mages are insanely rare and worth their weight in gold. Their ranks are thin even inside the kingdom, and the Empire? There are basically none left. And yeah, most mages don't just learn magic. It runs through their bloodline, so they're usually the noble family's top dog or a trusted member of that same clan. People with that kind of status don't usually charge into the front lines. Sure, a few remote regions are different, but for mages, fighting on the front lines is almost never workable. So yeah, using magic tactics is a total wild card, and nobody can ever predict what they'll do. That bomb of a revelation slams into him even harder because light mages are basically unheard of. Meanwhile, Dalek finally clocks how Tackle sees the entire mess because even standing there by himself, Tackle has already planned the advantage. But just when he thought he had it handled, fierce, unexpected enemies jumped in. And then a voice blared that they wouldn't let Dalek join the army. The story snaps to the mansion's front. Klija, the parents, little Tackle in his white cloak, and all the siblings huddled together when someone blurts out a furious protest, demanding answers and calling straight to their father and mother. Why? Baron Solis fires back that one day Dalek too will rise on the battlefield. But for now, it's nowhere near time. Baron Solis nods at Dalek like, "I see you worked your tail off," then slaps the moment into silence and tells Tackle to shut up for a beat. Tackle snaps back, insisting he already laid it out how his brother's light magic can punch straight through the Empire's iron cavalry. But the parents snap back that Dalek is just 12 years old. Then Klija crumples to her knees, grabs Tackle by the clothes, and begs with everything she has that Dalek can't be sent to a place this dangerous. Tackle shouts for his mother, but the mother. He turns to Chris and warns him not to spoil a kid's stubborn streak. Then Baron Solis just stands there, stone still, while the mansion looms behind him. Then the mother snaps out loud that something is terribly wrong. Baron Solis and young Tackle both snap into shock as her sudden, explosive intensity hits them. An internal narration spills their thoughts at first. They're just seething with jealousy over Tackle. But the more they watched him grind through the work, the clearer it hit them. Something huge was going on. The narration keeps hammering the same mystery. What on earth were they so desperate to envy? And now Tackle, burning with desperation, pushes toward the one goal he can't stop chasing. So why did these feelings hit so hard and turn into pure frustration? Meanwhile, the young hero studies alone in the library while a lurking watcher peers from behind a bookshelf. And the truth hits hard. This isn't about pride or appearances at all, because even they can't help but want the exact same thing. Then the truth slams into focus. Everyone's fighting for their family. That dramatic declaration pulls the Soli clan together, parents and kids standing united, side by side. A brutal flash of light detonates across the battlefield, and the Imperial soldiers scream as that blinding magic slams into them. One soldier shrieks that something's wrong with his eyes, while the others stagger backward, swamped in confusion and pain. Chris blurts out in pure shock, yelling for answers. What was that light supposed to be? But Clegea and her siblings just freeze there, slack-jawed, as the magical blast rips straight through the enemy ranks. Imperial cavalry riders scream, lose their nerve, and tumble off their horses in a full-blown panic. Horses whip around, utterly confused by the light magic, and one terrified trooper shrieks as he slips and goes down. Meanwhile, Kingdom soldiers surge forward to cut them off, but then a voice blasts out, "Everyone stop! Stay back!" The blinded Imperial cavalry stagger blindly through chaos, teetering on the edge of disaster with every step. They couldn't see a thing ahead. Then the cavalry, lost and disoriented, stumbled straight into the traps Tackles had set, crashing down into trenches and obstacles. An Imperial knight spots the trenches way too late, then grunts as he tumbles straight into them. And somehow another guy just shrugs like, "Trenches? No big deal." But the trap finally clicks into place, and those little steps and shallow trenches become a real roadblock, something cavalry usually slip past without breaking a sweat. Only if they could actually spot them with their own eyes. Blinded at the worst moment, the soldiers can't read the terrain and they crash into the defenses like dominoes, soldier after soldier. Inside the kingdom lines, the Iron Cavalry starts to buckle, and the troops explode into cheers like it's a miracle. They can't even wrap their heads around it. One man blurts out, "Are we really safe now?" while another stares in disbelief, stunned by the chaos. Then it hits them. Lord Dalek is the one who tore them apart with that killer magic. And as the invincible Iron Riders drop one after another, what a foresight, by gad. Dalek storms the battlefield in his shining white armor, and right after one single spell, the young mage flips the whole fight. Meanwhile, right from Margrave Hasbird's vantage point, an officer bursts in with urgent news about the Iron Cavalry, and another commander immediately clocks it. Baron Solis has clearly laid a deadly trap on the battlefield, and the Marquis himself leans in, eyes sharp, quietly judging every step of it as it unfolds. Over at Viscount Hiromi's forces, the commanders lock on to the chaos unfolding in front of them, and pure shock grips every face. From his command perch, Count Goat erupts in rage, staring in disbelief at what unfolds before him, and he roars that his Iron Cavalry is the deadliest force in the whole army. The reports hit, and his worst fear is confirmed. 1/3 of the Iron Cavalry is down. The Count snaps, loses his composure, and blasts that it's absurd, screaming for answers on how this could possibly happen. Meanwhile, on the chaos battlefield, someone closes in on a young Dalek and murmurs a quiet, sincere compliment, straight praise for the job he's doing. Derek shouted at his master, his voice trembling with raw emotion. Then, Tackle sneaks up from behind and lays a hand on Dalek's shoulder, praising him as he calls out that the young mage standing there in his white armor really did everything right. With his light magic, he completely flipped the battlefield. Tackle snaps at Dalek, telling him to leave the rest to them. Meanwhile, a commander takes one look and realizes roughly 2/3 of the enemy are still in play, then snaps orders to push everything forward to the next phase, right now, while another voice screams for every unit to get ready for long-range suppression fire. They kick off with Dirk Baron Solis's oldest son, charging into his very first battle, the same kid who'll later be hailed as the Sword Saint, the Swordsman of Light. And after his strike lands clean, Dalek goes wild, pumping his fists and celebrating his win like a man on fire, and the Imperial soldiers were left wounded without ever throwing a punch, smoldering with resentment and choking on pure humiliation. A devastated battlefield stretches out as a white bird screams across the sky above. Dalek stands amid the wreckage and barks at Tackle, telling him he'd done everything he could. The story snaps to Soli's Manor Council chamber, where someone loudly steps forward and declares they're about to kick off the very first regular council. Tackle says that right after his father and older brother marched off to war, he didn't sit around twiddling his thumbs. He pushed his parents to set up a flood defense council before they even left. He remembers sitting with his mother, sliding over his report, warning that old tech could trigger floods after a brutal drought, and his parents took every word to heart, probably because they'd seen it all before with records of both massive harvests and dry spells. Tackle's mother steps up and directly calls out to Kreesha. She gently reminds her daughter, "You promised you'd play quietly in the seat beside me during the meeting." And then we cut to 7-year-old Kreesha von Solis, the Solis family's eldest, clutching her teddy bear like it's the most precious thing in the world. That's why Young's tears hit at the meeting, despite her age. Her older brothers are in there, so it's explained why she shows up too. Because she wanted to be part of it, but she can't tear herself away from her mother's side, so she has to go anyway. Chrissia hugs her teddy bear tight, then declares, "Sorry, Sarah, I'm switching gears and playing with you instead." Then right in the middle of everything, someone shouts, "Lady Kreesha." A young blonde girl steps into view, and they introduce her as Sarah, the daughter of Baron Cornell from the Branch family. Sarah steps in with a crucial observer role, the kind where someone explains everything, so now Kreesha will do the same too, while another voice snaps that, honestly, they still don't have a clue. Sarah shoots out an apology, then waves it off like, "It's fine," and the story keeps going because she's from a Branch family. She's an earth magic user, and she's the only earth mage in their territory besides Tackle's mom. She's even a servant assigned to Tackle's mother, and she got sent to Estel through the kindness of Baron Cornell. Sarah suggests they hang back after the meeting, and Kreesha bursts into excited celebration. A comment section suddenly erupts with Tackle's explanation. The Cornell barony isn't led by who you think, it's actually run by Tackle's mom's younger brother, and the two families have a strong bond. Turns out Tackle's mother even sent Sarah along to smooth everything for her daughter at her new home. Then a family tree graphic flashes on screen, laying out every connection between Baron Solis's family and the Cornell barony. Meanwhile, Raymond stands up straight at the head of the council table and declares he's about to unveil the preliminary investigation report. Lord Tackle demanded answers, so he launched a full investigation, then tracked down an elder from a village near Mars to talk straight to the source. The records didn't mention any heavy rains or floods after the Great Drought, but what he uncovered was absolutely huge. Turns out, on Mars, once every 50 to 100 years, a flood hits so brutal the embankment straight up shatters, and young Tackle leans in, hanging on every single word of the report. But here's the twist: these floods have been getting wiped from memory for the last 20 years because nothing small has popped up to remind people, and the only thing that still lingers is that old warning: beware of water disasters after a long drought. Once that embankment gives way, the muddy torrent will surge in and gulp up the whole area, leaving behind massive, catastrophic damage. Then someone across the table leans in and asks, "Did Lord Tackle notice this too?" Tackle nods. "Yeah, I did." Tackle remembers this from an ancient history book, The History of the Barony, so he's basically admitting that half of it's probably lies. Then he apologizes anyway, while the tiny chibi council members clap and grin, praising the legend as nice. That very tale ends up backing up the barony's history and confirming it as true. Then the map flips on, showing the whole region east of Esther territory. The gigantic Al River rages, and on both banks sit sprawling golden granaries, because this river is basically the lifeline of everything there. And right on its edge stands the town of Mars. Tackle can't help but think, this town isn't even that old. In just the last 10 years, it exploded into prosperity as a grain collection hub because his parents pushed huge agricultural development. And that's probably why nobody at the government even knows about the legendary Great Flood. Raymond keeps talking, And it turns out these little river floods hit somewhere across the entire Esther territory every single year. But since the damage stays small, the government never noticed. So from now on, they'll watch every town and village besides Mars and press on with the investigation. Raymond drops his report, and right then he gets thanked when he stands in the doorway. He just nods like, "Yep, you're welcome." Raymond blasts out a warning. If Mars and everything around it gets swallowed by that once-in-a-century flood from the legends, the damage will be a nightmare far worse than the last drought. Tackle shoots back that he's already talked to his brother about grabbing Earth mages because once this war ends, his brother can finally send them over to build that embankment. Sarah tells the council they have to stop that flood, no excuses, no delays, whatever it takes. Meanwhile, young Clea grips her teddy bear so tightly in the meeting that her face screams pure seriousness. Then Tackle spills that he already knows the floods are coming next year. He lays out the catastrophe closing in next summer. The Orag River's banks are about to burst wide open thanks to days of relentless rain and brutal downpours. That muddy torrent is about to bulldoze the whole town of Mars and every scattered village, drowning tons of people overnight, and the granary region will be buried so deep in mud damage that it won't be repairable for years. A chart explodes onto the screen, showing the Esther territory's crop harvest ratio from the old timeline, because when a drought ravaged the whole region and ruined every other farmland, the low-lying stretch around Mars stayed easy to irrigate, took only minor damage, and still delivered about a third of the total harvest, which is why Mars became the lifeline for the starving land. Tackle finally realizes it's hopeless this flood is coming, and it'll wipe everything out without mercy. Then the video explains it plain and simple. Water wheels sparked growth across other regions, so people stop depending on the Mars area as much, though Mars still brings in about a fifth of the total production. So when the flood finally swallows the town, the damage hits way harder than in any earlier timeline, because Mars is basically the heart of those water wheel flour mills, and once they're wrecked, the destruction is colossal. Later on, someone corners Raymond and asks how his countermeasures are going. Tackle's mother says they're scouring the waterways and beefing up floodgates at the spots where the smaller floods already hit, and Raymond adds that they're also gearing up to build dikes near Mars. The talk just keeps rolling flood prevention plans, one after another, like they're checking rivers and sluice gates and loading up sandbags wherever they can, while the flour mill stays stuck in place but the collection points get dragged up to higher ground. Small Tackle can't stop marveling at the whole thing. But Chibicleja explodes, screaming that Tackle is nothing but a cheater and vowing she'll get rid of it. Meanwhile, Raymond watches the clock and knows the embankment's construction will kick off the moment the army comes back. Tackle's mother straight up admits they're still figuring out the budget and trying to keep everyone safe on a massive scale. So Raymond fires off the question, how much do we need to roll out to actually make it work? Then Tackle admits he's always been dying to know what's going on next door. And he turns to Raymond like, "Alright, so what happens to the neighboring Gorman Viscounty if a flood hits?" Raymond pulls out a diagram and tells them the truth upstream from Mars. The far side is a hill, so water can't possibly spill over to that side. Tackle's mother looks utterly baffled by the question, but Raymond jumps in, clears it up, and points back to what Lord Tackle said so. Now it sounds like that pesky steward won't show up to rattle them again, because the real complaint could be their embankment. And if it goes, Gorman's land gets flooded. Tackle's mother instantly clocks what that really means. Then Tackle lays it out. Gorman has been siphoning river water into that basin and rigging up water wheels to run it. Tackle and Clesia snap into motion, staring in pure shock. Tackle fires back, saying Gorman's endless whining just proved how they copy Esther now, and the note even admits Nishida's Kansai dialect slips out totally by accident. After that brutal drought, he says Gorman sprang into action building a pumping and power water wheel, then laying down their very own waterways. But the real killer is how many breakdowns keep happening, so the whole operation runs at a painfully low rate, and Chibeclicha can't help but think, yeah, I figured. Raymond finally admits he's no expert either. He's just been grinding, using what he knows from light novels and crashing every time. Then another voice cuts in. There's no way you can make gears that actually work by writing them from nothing, without mastering the basics. And the narration hits home this whole crystal of technology only took shape because a craftsman's hard-earned wisdom guided it. Out of nowhere, someone yells for Raymond to stop right there. Wait! Meanwhile, Tackle stares at the map with Estel territory and Viscounty Gorman marked out, and then it hits him. If that flood happens there, the waters could surge into Gorman too, upstream. The details make it crystal clear. This is absolutely possible. And some spots even show they cut the embankment on purpose to reroute the water. Tackle grins like he's been right all along. One of the council members coldly suggests, if Gorman's in danger now, it's basically your fault. And that brutal line instantly leaves Tackle reeling. Then Clage snaps and calls out to her big brother, Tackle. Tackle snaps at Clage, reminding her she promised to stay silent during the meeting. But Clage barges in with a tiny, sharp question, hugging her teddy bear. If the river never overflows, where does the water vanish to? Tackle hits the stop, and suddenly it clicks in his head, like the world just froze. He totally blanked on what would happen if he stopped the flood on Mars, because even knowing the exact flood points, he never once thought about what it would unleash downstream. Est will sink? No way. Because Est is farther down from Mars, and after Est come those farming villages, and past them lies Viscount Hieremi's territory. That realization slams into Tackle so hard it leaves him reeling like part of him has been dodging it without even noticing, because the truth is he can't predict what it'll do to everything. The range is way too wide, and he's stuck wondering if he can even react in time. Then his little sister spots the deadly mistake in his plan. Then, in a fun chibi scene, the voices go, "Is Clage amazing?" And they confirm she absolutely is. Someone hypes her up just like you'd expect from Lady Clage. And the little girl lights up, basking in all that praise. Tackle steadies himself, then breaks the news in a calm, official voice. Turns out they're already on it, because they've already drawn up a list of candidate locations that all need countermeasures. Then Tackle ends yet another tutoring session with Sarah, and right as the room settles, someone points out they have to crank up the number of earth mages they send out. Sarah, utterly drained, finally lets out a wave of relief that it's over. And then it hits everyone at once. This was way too close for comfort. Chibi shoots Sarah another heartfelt thanks for stepping in and helping the failing students again. And another chibi blurts that they don't even need details, they can just picture the whole thing unfolding. Meanwhile, Raymond gets interrupted. Someone calls him about Viscount Gorman and Viscount Al-Yerimi. He checks in with Lord Chris, and Clea pushes for Sarah to break the news to her brother. Raymond slams his hand on the table and tells the meeting straight up this info comes from an old book, so everyone has to accept its credibility is limited. Then he vows to issue a decree to harden the dikes and waterways in their territory, because next summer, flood risk is no joke. A little chibi-eye figure pops in to thank him for moving fast. Raymond steps up and declares it's time to wrap up the first regular meeting right here, right now. Tackle tells everyone that from now on, Lord Darren and Lord Dalek are joining the meeting too. He points out they're running out of time right up until next summer, and he keeps hammering away at those papers as he talks. He's pushing for a deeper talk about the countermeasures ahead, and the narration makes it clear the defenses against the Great Flood about to slam the Esther territory have only just started. A few days slip by after that meeting, and then someone calls out, "Lord Tackle." The young lord snaps his eyes to a map of the Estal territory, jaw set and mind racing, convinced that by next summer he'll make it in time, no matter what. Then boom, someone yells that a messenger from the fort is here. The moment he claps hands and goes wide-eyed, he tackles his way in, and instantly he realizes it's from his father. He screams that he's on his way and barrels toward the entrance. While overhead the carriage finally rolls up to the estate, bunches of figures already waiting around it. Dalek, Clage, and Sarah are right there in the crowd, watching everything unfold. A breathless messenger blares the news he's reporting live from the battlefield. The battlefield messenger bursts in with shaking urgency, and she gasps that Count Hasteberg's army at Southern Gate Fortress has thrown himself into Count Goat's army for the Griffonian Empire. And when the report hits, young Tackle's eyes go wide with pure shock. Then the messenger leans into the moment, voice blazing. Lord Dalek, Baron Solus's eldest son, crushed the fight with a legendary debut. His Baron's army wiped out the enemy's iron cavalry to the last man, and she declares their victory is absolute. Every soldier is safe, with only a handful injured. Tackle's mom froze her hands over her face, crushed by emotion, while little Tackle calls out to her Sarah watching from the back, and then her expression flips to sheer relief the second she realizes Derek is safe. In one smaller, quieter pause, the family huddles together, and the mother can't help but think Baron Solis is going to lose it when he learns she was only worried about their oldest son. The Maldackle looks up and asks if Dad and Big Brother are coming home. Someone straight up asks Baron Solis, "Are you really coming back?" And he confirms it with a solid, no-doubt answer. Tackle springs right in, demanding he grab a mountain of souvenirs. But Baron Solis only smirks and says he might not have any, so Tackle snaps back, yelling, "What do you mean? Why not?" Then the word finally slams into Est, and the whole city erupts in pure joy-sake and food flood every corner, and towns and villages throw their celebrations together, while the families and loved ones of the soldiers let out the biggest, trembling sigh of relief. This narration points out it's the fourth of the 5 great calamities from the previous era's war, while young Clasia and Tackle cuddle up close, sweet and affectionate. And right there in their home, the Solis family crowds together. Raymond stands to the side. Cleeja's right beside them. The mother cradles little Takiel in the doorway, and Maid grins from the background. Then the announcement hits the room, ringing out loud with the weight of Asian success.